Welcome everybody back into NerdSesh. As always, I'm Carson Bradburn, and alongside me is Logan Camden. And today we are joined by a very special guest, our friend Tyler, aka Hoop Venue, who is going to be with us today to discuss one of the wildest weekends in NBA history. Because obviously we are going to talk more about the Luka Doncic to the Lakers trade, which to me is the single craziest trade in NBA history. But before we even get to that, we have more major news to unpack because De'Aaron Fox is now a San Antonio Spur. He and Jordan McLaughlin are headed to San Antonio. The Kings get back Zach LaVine, Sidy Cissoko, 3 firsts and 3 seconds, and the Chicago Bulls are the third team in this deal. They get Zach Collins, Trey Jones, Kevin Huerter, and their own 2025 first-round pick back from the Spurs. So, Tyler, there's a lot to unpack here. There's obviously a lot of moving pieces, but who do you view as the big winner of this deal?
Honestly, I don't know if it's a hot take, but I feel like Sacramento immediately comes to mind because I think in terms of where they're at right now, it's an interesting direction to kind of just like push all your marbles into like we're gonna get Zach LaVine. It's interesting though because I feel like the Kings have been one of the hottest teams in the league over the past month or so, especially offensively. Like they're getting back to that 2023 type of fast-paced, high-powered offense. They've been using Malik Monk as the point guard, and Fox has kind of been checked out during their win streak, playing off the ball, kind of just spotting up, getting to a couple pull-up jumpers here and there, but just a little bit checked out. Monk's been the one running the offense. DeRozan's been doing his stuff. Sabonis has been playing out of his mind. And I feel like getting LaVine as like an off wing to just fit into the formula they've kind of crafted over the last month makes their offense so fun. Just they're going to be a ridiculous offense. LaVine is shooting 44% on pull-up threes this year. He's shooting 68% at the rim. He's shooting like 43% on catch and shoot threes. He's generating 1.3 points per possession in transition. He's been the most efficient isolation player in the league this season. Like LaVine, when it comes to putting the ball in the basket, there's pretty much nothing he can't do at an extremely efficient level. So for a team that already has the playmakers, already has the motion system in place, I think LaVine is just going to be an awesome fit, and they're going to be a must-watch team. And then you get 3 firsts. Like they really I think that's where I'll start. I think the Kings really just won this trade.
I think the Kings made out like bandits, man. I mean, the Spurs and the Kings, I really think are the big winners from this, and the Bulls are just the big losers. I mean, you look a year ago, the Kings now have Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and yet, like you said, they also come away with the 3 first-round picks, and you're kind of like throwing your hands up. I agree. I think the Kings are fascinating now. Like, they've just got a lot of really good players. Like, I'm confident with Monk running the point guard spot and LaVine and DeRozan. They've got a lot of offensive firepower with those guys and with Domas. And, like, if Keegan can get back to the baseline that he was at last year, like, I think they've got a really solid starting 5. I love this for the Kings. I think this is a home run. I'm just kind of confused as to why the Bulls agreed to this. I don't know. That's the other aspect of this to me that just kind of left me, like, confused, just because we've been begging and pleading with the Bulls to move off of this for so long, right? Trade Lonzo, trade LaVine, trade DeMar, trade Vooch, reboot. And I thought LaVine was one of the most intriguing assets at the trade deadline this season. A lot of the stuff that you mentioned, Tyler, like he's had a really underrated offensive season because he's toiling away in Chicago. And when you're looking at prospective playoff teams, I think he is like the asset that could put you over the top potentially. I just think the Bulls could have got more back. So I think the Kings are the biggest winner, and the Spurs are obviously a winner in this too by getting their star point guard to put alongside Wemby. But I also think the Bulls are a clear loser in this one. To only get their first round pick for this year back is like the big part of the deal.
And they didn't even get their first back outright. All they did was remove a top 10 protection. And if they traded Zach LaVine, they were already going to have a top 10 pick in all likelihood, which means they would have gotten it back. So I am a bit perplexed by the Bulls haul here, and maybe I'm just higher on Zach LaVine than the league is. I understand the first thing that people bring up with LaVine is the contract, and then the second thing that people bring up with LaVine is some of the availability stuff, and it feels like people just overlook that this is a guy who is currently scoring 24 points per game on 64% true shooting. I thought should have been an all-star, has been an elite on and off ball scorer, fits into so many different offensive situations, and the contract I don't think is egregious when Zach LaVine is playing at this level. You're paying him $43 million. Yeah, that's a lot. You're only attached to it for another 2 years after this. Like, I don't think it's the albatross that it's been made out to be, that maybe you would have considered it last year when he was struggling with health and he was just struggling as a basketball player. I'm really unsatisfied with this haul if I'm the Bulls, and I do think that maybe I just overestimate the market, but I was looking at the Warriors and I was thinking I'd give up Kuminga and I'd give up a little bit of draft capital. You probably weren't ever going to get back, like, multiple real valuable firsts, but could you have gotten back a first that isn't just your own, removing a protection and like a little something extra? I do think so. I don't know why everybody's so low on Zach LaVine.
Can I ask you guys, do you think there's a really, really large gap between Fox and LaVine as assets?
As assets? Probably, because Fox is a couple years younger and because he doesn't have any of the health concerns. But Jimmy Butler is the big fish still out there, right? And I've consistently said Zach LaVine, to me, at this deadline is a better asset than Jimmy, because
Agreed.
I do think that you have more flexibility in terms of fit because he is younger. I don't have any more availability concerns about him than I do Jimmy. So we'll see if Jimmy lands a haul at all. But like, if he does, I have a feeling it's going to be more than what LaVine went for. And to me, that just doesn't really add up. But on the Kings side of this, I'm maybe not quite as high on it as you guys are. I think that what they did here is solid. I also think, though, it all comes from the place of the Sacramento Kings wanting to do whatever they can to be a competitive basketball team at all times, just because they have had so many years of being in the gutter and they feel like they owe it to their fan base, and they've tried to build themselves to being a competitive team, which is the spot that they are currently in. But my thought when we started hearing the talks about, okay, De'Aaron Fox is probably just going to leave in free agency if the Kings don't trade him. So they probably are going to trade him to get the assets back that they can. My feeling was, okay, what are you doing of any significance without De'Aaron Fox? Nothing. So at this point, it may be hard to stomach, but you just blow it up and you get a ton of young players and picks back for the combination of Fox and Sabonis, and then you're really well positioned to start a rebuild. I understand that the Kings don't want to do that because, again, that then renders the DeRozan deal pointless. And it makes you sort of look at everything they've done and you're like, man, this was all for nothing. And that's a difficult thing to stomach. So in terms of them trying to stay competitive and get some future draft assets, I think that they did a solid job here. I can't hate on it. It's just, if we go a few years in the future, how are we really going to feel like this haul ages compared to if they had pushed harder to get back a Vassell, a Castle, and the 3 firsts looks really good on paper. I will say it's really 2 firsts because the 2025 Charlotte pick is lottery protected. The Hornets are going to be picking in the lottery. That's going back. That's turning into 2 seconds. So it's 2 firsts. One of them is 2031 for Minnesota. One of them is a 2027 Spurs pick, which probably is going to be a relatively low first-round pick. Again, I think it's solid. They got back the star now, and they got back some future assets, but I probably would have just gone full reboot and let's stockpile all the assets.
What makes it tough to do like the whole reboot thing is I feel like we have this like championship or bust mindset, whereas for a lot of teams it is just like we want to deliver for our fans, like the whole like light the beam, all that stuff. Like, let's get to the playoffs, let's have a fun run, because we do think fondly. Like, think about the 2000s Kings. We look back and that era of basketball was just awesome. We fondly remember that era,
right? But they were in championship contention. No, but they were there. I mean, let's be honest. The finals took place in the West every year at that time.
No, that is true. They were definitely better than these Kings are. There's probably a better example out there that I can't think of right now. But
well, you could say like maybe the grit and grind Grizzlies, right, of the early 2010s. There's absolutely value in being a good basketball team, especially when you're in Sacramento. And I don't want to be like a pure championship or bust guy, but I'm just like, Zach LaVine, as much as I like him, is a downgrade from De'Aaron Fox right now.
You don't think that they could move LaVine later potentially and then get some assets back for him?
I definitely don't think that's the vision here. And no,
I
not
don't
really.
think
It's
it
certainly
is.
not comparable to what they would have gotten back if they said, let's really push the future value that we can get back for Fox to the maximum.
I mean, I don't think that's where they're headed either. I think they want to stay a competitive basketball team, but
Like, is this a team that has a chance to win a playoff series?
maybe.
I think it depends on matchup. I think it depends
Yeah.
on matchup.
So-
But like, let me ask you this, because you said LaVine's a downgrade from Fox. I agree if we're just talking about as players, but specifically for the offense the Kings want to run, do you view Fox or as an upgrade over LaVine with like the motion and the transition play? Like, I feel like LaVine might be a better fit, and then you unlock more of Monk and DeRozan as creators.
I think that he is very arguably a better pure fit. I still think I would rather have Fox's talent even in this situation. I love Malik Monk. I am excited to see what he can do as a primary creator for them, and obviously he's grown so much as a playmaker. That's exciting. I do think, even though it's very silly that Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan are now already teamed up again, like, that is a better fit because LaVine is so much more lethal as an off-ball scorer compared to Fox. I think that this offense is going to be really, really good. I do. I also think that this defense is going to have pretty major issues everywhere. Point of attack, back line.
That's the problem. Like, I feel like they didn't address a single one of their big issues. They kind of just like improved what they were already elite at. And it's like their size, rebounding, and defensive versatility are all just bottom tier. Like,
But dude, think about the
notice-
LaVine handoffs from Domas though. Think about the LaVine handoffs.
It's beautiful stuff, but like, dude, Sabonis is literally the only plus rebounder on that roster, like top to bottom. And it's so bad watching them try to rebound when Sabonis is like boxed out or just even off the floor. And so, yeah, I want to wait till Thursday because we don't know what's going to happen. But like, they still have some assets. They still have picks. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do try to shore up those things and kind of just push it all in and is like, we think we're a good enough offense that if we shore up the defense, we shore up the rebounding. Like, and I don't know who's out there. Like, do you go for Goga Batadze, Jonathan Isaac? I don't know who's available. But it's like, I do think there are guys out there that can shore up some of these issues. And then also just like internal development, because DeRozan's a little bit on the older side, but you definitely still have like 2 or 3 good years out of LaVine, I think. He's only 29.
Yeah.
So, like, Devin Carter developing, Keon Ellis, further offensive improvement. Like, I think Keegan Murray, he's still a third-year player. So I still think there are pathways to them. Like, I think they can remain competitive for a few years now.
Yeah, and like I said, I cannot hate on this path because just to add to your point, like, when DeMontis has been on the floor without De'Aaron Fox this year, the Kings have had good results. I think that they've been like a +7 net team. Their offense has still been really good. And so now you are injecting a guy who brings more of that off-ball value, who brings more of that shooting, which hasn't been a strength for this Kings team. They're one of the lower volume and lower percentage three-point shooting teams. I really think that they looked at their current situation and they said, we don't want to trade De'Aaron Fox. We do not want to take any move that makes us a less competitive basketball team. So we are going to try to basically just replace his value immediately as much as we can. And then also we know that he's the better asset. So we'll take whatever future value we can get. And I understand that path. I do. It doesn't make them the big winner of this trade, though. I think the big winner of this trade is San Antonio.
It doesn't. But I really agree with Tyler's point, though. I don't think the Kings are that far away in terms of roster construction. I really think if they got 2 more defensive-oriented guys who can give you 20 minutes a night in the rotation on the wing and in the big spot, I think they'd be, a lot more competitive. And the West is just going to be cutthroat. I mean, if we're running all these teams back, I mean, it's just going to be a dogfight every single year in the West. But I don't feel like their roster is that far away, and there's some flexibility. But I think at the core of this for Sacramento, I think it's the fact that that's such a hard sell to the fan base to just completely go back into the gutter. I think that Sacramento is probably just going to continue pivoting over the next couple of years. Whatever moves on the margins, if it's, all right, well, DeMar wants to go to a competitor, so we'll move him if LaVine wants out. But I think they're going to continue pivoting every year to stay as competitive as possible, and I don't mind that. It's like Indiana. It's like these smaller markets, man. It's just a hard sell on going right back into the town. I mean, look at Washington, dude. Who the hell watches Washington Wizards basketball? I mean, you just don't want to be there. I'd much rather be where the Kings are at than back in the gutter, just praying and hoping that we can be relevant again. So I don't hate this. And I don't really think the Kings had the choice. I think this was Fox's choice at the end of the day, and considering that, I think they did pretty well.
How do you feel like the Spurs did here, Tyler, getting Fox?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't have to give up any of their young players, so that's just an automatic win. Like you get a player of Fox's caliber. I think Fox has his flaws. I think I made a tweet earlier about how the idea of Fox is a lot different than the actual player in terms of like he's still viewed as this like elite north-south slasher. And that just isn't who he is anymore. He's very jump shot reliant and things of that nature. But in terms of like, now you have a legitimate on-ball scoring option who's consistent next to Wemby for the first time. Because it's like, they kind of get this streaky production from guys. Like, you'll get a good Chris Paul scoring game. You'll get a stretch of 20-point games from Devin Vassell. And then followed by like a 2-point game. De'Aaron Fox gives him that consistent 20-point presence that I think can just unlock Wemby a little bit more. I think... it's still tough for me. I don't really view Fox as the guard of the Wemby era, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think he's your one. I don't think that's your duo. Like, I don't think we look back 10 years from now and say Wemby and Fox was the duo of the Spurs.
Do you think he's good enough to be a number 2?
I think it depends on the roster fit and depends on the play style of the big. I think we'll have to wait and see how Wemby develops. But, like, I think Fox could be a Jamal Murray number 2. Like in 2023, I think that's where De'Aaron Fox would be a number 2. Problem is, I don't think he's a great interior passer. And the guy you want next to Wemby is the best possible interior passer because he's just a god-tier finishing threat. So
yeah, it's Trae Young. Let's be honest. It was always Trae Young. But if that's not on the table, it's not on the table.
My guy would be Darius Garland. If I could pair any guard with Wemby, it'd be Darius Garland.
That would be awesome. But the reason I say Trae is because it looked for a time like the Hawks might be at that fork in the road where they would give up Trae, and then you just get back your picks from the DeJounte disaster and maybe a little something extra. And, like, that was always my absolute favorite because I agree. It's that elite playmaker. It's that elite interior passer that fully unlocks Wemby. But if that guy's not there, then I personally am still very much in favor of going out and getting the star guard that you can't get.
Right, and that's what I don't want to sound like I'm too low on the move. Like, it's still a huge win because you didn't trade away any of your young players. You still have Castle, Vassell, and you only lost a couple picks. Like, you are in a great position now to start building. And like you mentioned, Fox is only 27 years old. And he's sort of, I don't want to make it sound like the shift in play style is necessarily a really bad thing, because now he's gotten to a point where his game's going to age better. The use of pace, the mid-range game, his game's going to age better than just like pure slashing. So I think, yeah, you go out and get a 25 point per game scorer who can create, who can make plays, and who isn't a defensive liability. Yeah, A+, like it's an A+ move.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, though, about the assets that they gave up. I mean, we were all theorizing potential trades that would get Fox to San Antonio, and it all involved Castle. It all involved Vassell. Dude, they didn't even give up Keldon Johnson. Like, I'm not the biggest Keldon Johnson guy, but, like, they don't lose anything. These picks are relatively meaningless. And so, yeah, I also think the Spurs crushed it. And I'm encouraged. You know, I think that it's going to be a chemistry thing, and I think Fox and Wemby are going to figure it out in a big way. You're talking about some of his struggles as a passer. Wemby's the greatest lob threat of all time. Like, I think Fox over time is just going to figure out how to get the ball to Wemby. And I can't think of I mean, Jokic is obviously like the most terrifying pick and roll partner you could have because he can kill you everywhere. But I think that's what Wemby is eventually going to be too, with just how great he is at both levels. It's just, that's a really hard two-man action to stop. A guy who can get to the rim at will and is blazing quick, paired with a guy who is 7'4" with the longest wingspan I've ever seen. Like, I just think that two-man action is going to be unstoppable in certain defensive matchups against teams that don't have the personnel to cover it. And more importantly, like you said, Carson, when that star guard becomes available, you don't wait, you don't bide your time, you go out there, you put your chips on the table, and you go and make that move, because these guys don't come available every single year. And when that guy does come available, you have to pull the trigger. And that's where I really I got to applaud the Spurs for being willing to pull the trigger and not really give up anything. It's they crushed this deal, man. They crushed it.
I love what the Spurs did here. I really do.
Yeah.
And I think that this is exactly how you want to build around a young superstar like Wemby. It's almost an unprecedented situation, right? Where you're like, okay, could this guy be the best dude on a title team on his rookie deal? Like, we're talking about a top 10 player in year 2. When you have that guy, I love being aggressive, and I especially love being aggressive using picks where you're not compromising existing young players on your team. And the Spurs have done an incredible job, probably an underrated job, of just building up a wealth of picks. They still have so much left in the tank, man. They still have all of the Hawks first rounders from the DeJounte trade. That's a 2025 first. That's a 2026 first swap. That's a 2027 first. And then through 2031, they have 3 more firsts or first round pick swaps. So that's why, Tyler, you're talking about not being sure if Fox is like that true number 2. Well, there's no question to me that this is a team that is in a really good position to go out there and find that third star. And they don't have to rush on that. But they can absolutely find somebody who is a connective playmaker, who is a big defensive wing, who has some of that creation, like whatever archetype they're looking for to complement these two. I think they can go out there and get. And I do think that this is going to be a really tough 2-man game to stop. Like I said, I would have loved if they could have gotten Trae Young, that true elite playmaker. That wasn't on the table. I think that Fox was the next best reasonable option, because although he is not a particularly high-end passer, and although, as you say, Tyler, the idea of him as this elite downhill guard doesn't exist in the same way. Like, he takes as many shots at the rim as Jalen Brunson does. He really likes to live on his pull-up shot diet. However, he is still one of the fastest men alive, and he does still have that ability to blow by you at an extremely high level. And I wonder if maybe he could be a little bit more aggressive attacking downhill, because that does unlock so much for Wemby. When you think about the pick and pop game, having that guard who can collapse the defense, who can consistently draw 2 defenders, opening things up for him in every way, right? I just think that is how he creates the best offense for Wemby and for this team, is if he does get back at least just a little bit more to being that real downhill guard. No matter what, he's just an awesome scorer, and he is the sort of consistent offensive presence that they haven't had in San Antonio alongside Wemby. I do think that he opens things up for him and he makes him better. And they were able to add that guy at 27 years old without giving up Castle or Vassell. I don't think this is singularly the move that launches them into contention, even with Wemby's development. I think that there is another move to be made, but that's the thing. The Spurs have every asset to make that other move, and that's why I feel really, really good about this.
Yeah, I've been picturing the pick and pop for like the last 10 minutes, and I'm almost like, the more I think about Wemby as like a roll, like his roll gravity, his pop gravity, I feel like he can make it so much easier for Fox to get to the rim. Like it's like a seesaw thing where it's I again want to compare it to Murray and Jokic, because like Murray gets so many easy driving lanes off of Jokic rolling, and the roller, like, remember Minnesota's pick and roll coverage? It was Cat, you're going to stay on Jokic and we're just going to let Murray
do not guard Jamal.
Exactly. You can't do that with De'Aaron Fox, because he's still so fast and athletic, and he's also like a 75% finisher at the rim or whatever he is. Like, he's still an absurd interior finisher. He's going to have easier pull-up mid-range jumpers now, because Sabonis, for as good of a screener and roller as he is, doesn't have that same type of scoring threat when he's either in the short roll or on the pop. Like, credit to Sabonis for improving the 3-ball. He's not giving you 10 3-point attempts a game like Wemby is, and making 37% of them or whatever he is.
Yeah.
Also, Wemby's also an incredibly underrated screener. I think, like, the way he uses his frame, despite not being super heavy, I've talked about quite a bit. Really, really good screener, good at making contact, good roll angles. I'm also excited to see Fox play off of Wemby post-ups as a cutter, as a handoff guy, split actions, things of that nature. And yeah, to me, they just got to find the guys to connect it now, because I'm kind of, the more I hear you guys talk about it, and the more I kind of talk myself into it, like, I see the vision with Fox. I'm getting more and more there. It makes sense. And I think Wemby's going to be like this all-time level player. I feel like that's pretty clear at this point. And then it's like, you don't need a super high-end number 2 to pair with a guy like that. You just need someone who's good enough. And then you get those connective pieces. And so my mind kind of immediately goes to like the ideal connective piece in between Fox and Wemby. Ideally is like a Scotty Barnes type of player, where it's like, I'm going to be a very versatile defender. I'm going to be a really good connective passer. But then I'm like, what if Jeremy Sohan is that guy? Like, what if he turns into that guy?
I am not the most optimistic about Sohan's offensive development to that point. Now, I do think that he's improved this year, but I think that the entire beauty of having the sort of assets that the Spurs have is you don't necessarily have to say, oh, what if this guy becomes this? You just say, okay, perfect. We want a Scotty Barnes type. Why don't we just get Scotty Barnes, who I am not highest on compared to some other people. I see some people say things about Scotty Barnes that make me go, whoa, let's hold on a second. However, is there a better role for him long-term than being that connective playmaker, focus on the defensive end, be your number 3 scorer? Like, no. I think that would be incredible. I think that is the ideal sort of guy that you're talking about for them long-term.
I was thinking about other guys in-house. I mean, I was looking at Devin Vassell as being like your number 3 scorer, and then Sohan. I mean, I think there's a lot of intriguing guys.
I feel like Vassell is a 4 if you want to win the title.
I wanted to add, you were talking about the two-man game. I mean, that's the one thing that De'Aaron Fox has never had that I don't want to undersell. Domantas Sabonis is like one of the most single-dimensional, like one-dimensional scorers in the way he gets buckets. Like, don't get me wrong. Sure, he's stretching the floor this year on like 2 attempts a game. Shout out Domas, but and thank God. I mean, look, dude, I've seen practice clips of Domantas Sabonis shooting threes for 5 years. I'm glad it's finally translated to the game, but Sabonis has never been that kind of scorer out of pick and roll, right? And that's what Fox has always had to manufacture is when he's screening, he's always looking for buckets. Now he actually has somebody that is like actually dangerous and deadly. We've just never seen him paired with a pick and roll partner that's actually like a capable scorer, and that's why I'm really excited for Fox.
That's a great point, because even before Sabonis, like, is the best pick and roll scorer Fox has ever played with Rashawn Holmes with the push shot?
Oh my God!
It might be.
They started on the Rashawn Holmes push shot.
Like, I feel like that's the most lethal pick and roll scorer Fox has played with.
Wemby is going to be by far the most lethal threat off the roll and by far the most lethal threat off the pop that he has ever played with. And keep in mind, this is De'Aaron Fox, who is a 91st percentile pick and roll scorer, man. Absolute pick and roll weapon with the downhill threat still, is an elite finisher when he does get to the rim. One of the better 2-point jump shooters in basketball. He's like 48% on 2-point jumpers. Elite floater, over 50% on floaters on the year. I think it's a really awesome pairing. I think that 2-man game is going to be dangerous, and I'm so excited to see where the Spurs do continue to add high-end talent down the line. But for now, they've made the kind of move that should get them in the playoffs. My first thought when they did this was like, okay, this team is going to be in the playoffs now this year. Then I looked at the West, and I was like, damn, this West is so deep. But they should be like a play-in lock, I want to say, and they're probably not a team that wins a series this year, but like this is a strong step in the right direction. This is exactly what I want to see them doing with Wemby. Let's return to the Bulls for a second here. We touched on it a little bit, but Tyler, what do you make of their haul here, and what do you make of the direction they're taking?
I am going to play devil's advocate here and say, okay, I'm not even mad at it, and it's just because they finally chose a path. Like, yeah, they've been sitting in this basketball purgatory, and it's so. Chicago's my hometown team, so it hurts my heart to see everyone around me just like lose their love for basketball because of the Chicago Bulls, and then also because of the Bears, they lose their love for football. You know, Chicago sports are in the absolute gutter, so I think it's fun to see them actually choose a direction, and I actually think, like, don't get me wrong, roster for roster, they're one of the worst teams in the league, but in terms of a developmental type of roster, like, I don't feel bad about the guys they've collected, like a Trey Jones, Giddey, Kobe White, Ayo Dosunmu. Like, I feel like they have a bunch of guys who, like, you can get a young star potential in, and it's a good environment to develop in, as opposed to we're going to throw you on the worst team imaginable with no direction. You're going to go play pick and roll with Kyle Kuzma, and that's how you're going to develop your game. I think the Bulls have some nice young playmakers and things of that nature. So yeah, I don't love the haul for LaVine, but I love the idea of just choosing a path and just having a roster of young guys where if you get that 1A, like if Cooper Flag falls into your lap, now it's a good environment for him to develop in.
It feels like we're giving the Bulls a lot of credit for getting a passing grade then, maybe, because, like, how obvious has it been to all of us for multiple years that they should have blown up? And, whoa, that sounds crazy. Not blown up entirely, although I'm sure some Bulls fans would advocate for that. Blown it up. And again, maybe I'm just higher on LaVine than the consensus around the league, but I'm looking at this and thinking this is his best season. And for you to just get a protection off your own pick that you would have gotten even if you traded Zach LaVine anywhere else because you would have bottomed out more, like that's just disappointing to me. Maybe you're higher on Trey Jones than I am. I look at the players as like a zero that they get here. Trey Jones and Zach Collins and Kevin Herter. I don't care.
I just view Trey Jones as like the type of guy that's he's not gonna overstep. Like if you drafted
not at all.
If you drafted a true 1A to the Bulls with LaVine would overstep the development, I think.
My thing is, I just look at this from a purely asset standpoint, and I think the Bulls have just bungled this entire timeline from when they built this up to be a competitive basketball team with Lonzo, LaVine, DeMar, and Vooch, and I just think they have bungled it entirely. Like, I think LaVine's value had gotten higher, and I think they could have gotten more at this deadline for him. I thought they should have traded DeMar before he wanted to leave in free agency, and I think they did a sign and trade, but I mean, they got nothing back. Like, they should still deal Vooch. I just think that they should have done these moves 3 years ago, and they also just have not gotten the value that they should have gotten back for some of these. Even, I mean, damn, man, even back to Caruso, like, they got back Josh Giddey. Like, I just think the Bulls have won. So, Tyler, I appreciate your positivity, man, and, like, I'm just not going to put the kid gloves on for the Bulls. I think they have one of the worst front offices in basketball.
I agree.
The worst.
Maybe.
Can I say?
Hey, Mavs might take the cake. The Mavs might take the cake, Tyler.
A new contender has emerged, and they're throwing heavyweight punches.
Can we say? Can I just say? So you know how when we look back at NBA history and we evaluate players relative to era, it's like I'm gonna look at Bill Russell versus the '60s, not the transition.
Yeah, of course.
That's how I view the Bulls front office. Like I'm gonna evaluate their moves relative to the Bulls front office because the bar is in hell.
And that's the sense that I got from your initial
take. I view it as an A+ just to get rid of LaVine and choose a direction.
I get it, and I think that is probably how some Bulls fans are feeling, just like, thank God finally we did something. And there is something to the point that, like, after last season, when LaVine had been hurt and he had his worst individual season in a long time, like, some people would have viewed LaVine as a negative asset. And you're like, do we have to attach something to him to get off of him? So that's why I've seen some Bulls fans expressing relief that, like, hey, we didn't trade him at that absolute low point, and, like, we were at least able to get something.
And maybe that's
also, he's just been so much better this year. Maybe he's just the most underrated asset in the NBA.
No, maybe that's
what it is.
Maybe that's the point that we're bearing. Maybe, I guess, the contract might be more of an albatross than we're making it out to be,
My question
I don't think it is, personally. I don't think it is.
My question is, so we talk about all these teams, right, that, like, they could have gotten more. You mentioned the Warriors with Kuminga. I think the general idea going around the league is none of those teams viewed LaVine as the actual needle mover, especially with the way the Warriors have slipped. Maybe if they traded LaVine at the very beginning of the season while the Warriors were like 9-2 or whatever, the Warriors would have pulled that trigger. But with the way they've slipped, I almost wonder if they just kind of were like, we don't even view that as the needle mover. Because for as good of a scorer as LaVine is, he still is a very deeply flawed playmaker and defensive player.
Yeah.
And so it's like you kind of already have to have that baseline of, like, you're just going to come in and score. And then that's going to push us over the edge. And I don't know if there was a team out there, maybe Orlando could have maybe you could have gotten some more stuff from Orlando, and they view Paolo and Franz as, like, their lead playmakers. But yeah, that's what's tough for me, because I look at the teams that were rumored, like the Warriors, and it's like if LaVine got to the Warriors, they probably would still just be like a mid team. So maybe they weren't willing to do what the Kings did, is kind of how I feel about it.
Here's how I feel about the Warriors. As a Warriors fan, I'm disgusted by what they've done to Steph Curry. I think the entire 2-timeline thing was a complete travesty. I think the fact that they didn't trade away Wiseman as a pick was a travesty. They didn't trade away Kuminga as a pick. They didn't trade away Moody as a pick. And the number of dudes who apparently they haven't seen as a needle mover over the years, if it's Pascal Siakam years ago, if it's OG Anunoby, whatever number of players who have become available. Don't get me started on marketing because they can't give up pods. Like, as a Warriors fan who has gone to several games this year, including their last game against the Suns, It is sad. It is a disservice to the greatest player in franchise history. And what I've been saying for a year plus now is they have to choose a direction. So if they were to say, hey, we want to trade Steph, well, in a basketball vacuum, that is the best move because they're not building a contender at this point. But they're not going to move off of Steph. So I would just say Jonathan Kuminga is not the sort of asset to me who I'm like losing sleep over if I give him up just to try to build an actual playoff team around Steph Curry. Not a contender. That window is closed to me. But a team that can be really competitive in a playoff series instead of a team that has zero creation alongside him. That is legitimately one of the most incompetent offenses in the league if you take Steph Curry off of it. We're talking Wizards level offense without him. That's where I just think it's worth it to do whatever you can to improve. And they could have bought relatively low on LaVine. And like if they were to give up Kuminga, they would have had to give up a handful of like filler salaries. But maybe they don't have to give up any draft capital. And then for the Bulls, that's already a better return because you're still going to get back the pick that you're getting back from the Spurs because it would have been a top 10 pick. And then you're also getting Jonathan Kuminga, who is at least an intriguing building block. If I'm the Warriors, I'm pissed that this is the price. But then again, I'm sure they knew this, and I'm sure they were just doing their overly stubborn, we're not going to do anything to help Steph shtick, and that's even worse to me. Because this price
I just learned that you were a Warriors fan.
Yeah.
I always associated you with the Phoenix Suns for some reason.
Well, we went to school at ASU, so I was in Phoenix. But yeah, I'm from the Bay. I increasingly am just like an NBA fan. Like I don't think that I'm like super biased for the Warriors or anything, but it does suck watching this happen to Steph.
Hey, the rumors right now swirling is that LeBron is on the trade block and the Warriors and the Cavs.
No, they put that to bed. I thought that they said that LeBron is not going to be moved.
I mean, I think it's incredibly unlikely. Also, bro, they cannot take that from me. I need to see Luka and LeBron play together, man.
At least one game.
At least one. At least one.
I think that'd be crazy. Like it'd be so fun to see. Like just finish out this season. Like there's a world where LeBron gets dealed in the offseason or leaves. I don't know what his contract looks like. And then we look back and it's like, remember those 12 games where Luka Doncic and LeBron James overlapped on the Lakers?
That would be so insane. There would be no comparison for like a partnership of two players that great that was that brief. Right. Let's talk about that partnership though. But I want to start with the other side of the deal, the Dallas Mavericks side of the deal. We discussed this on Saturday night. We gave our live reactions. It was the most shocked that I have ever been at a trade in my lifetime. It was the most shocking moment in my NBA lifetime. Tyler, do you think the Luka deal, from Dallas's perspective, is going to go down as one of the worst trades in NBA history?
The only way it doesn't is if they win a championship in the next like 2 or 3 years. And that's literally the only way. Even some Mavs fans would even still be upset if they won the championship.
I still think it's a bad trade.
I don't know because it's tough because I do think Luka gives you like 10 years of contention. Yeah. But there are teams, we brought it up earlier with the Kings, early 2000s Kings, where you just have years of contention, but you never get over that hump. Would you?
But the comparison for Luka is more like a Dirk window, where you're talking from the early 2000s to the early 2010s, you're in the mix.
Yeah, and I do think, first of all, like I'm not assuming the Mavs are going to win a championship. I still think it's an absolute loss of a trade. The only way I'd go back on that is if they do win a championship. But my question is, would you rather be a team like Dallas that never wins a championship? So assume they never win 2011. You just get like 15 years or whatever of we're a 60-win team but never get there, or a team that has like a 2-year window but wins a championship. Like that's what's tough. Because I do think like the ultimate goal in the sport is to win a championship. And I can't even think of a team. The Raptors, I guess, like think about the 2019 Raptors where it's like, do you think the Raptors would have rather remained a 58-win team that gets bounced in the second round until 2030?
Or it's like the Lakers when they traded Anthony Davis, right? Because everybody likes to do the revisionist thing if they kept Ingram and Lonzo and all those guys. But it's like they won the title, so you can't say anything.
Well, okay, here's the distinction that I would make. The Raptors couldn't have remained a 50-something win team until 2030. That requires the sort of generational superstar who keeps your window open and you say, okay, this specific iteration of the team didn't win it all. Fine, we just retool. Okay. That guy is that special. He's going to get us close.
Karl Malone. Utah Jazz, 20 years of contention, nothing.
Yeah.
You trade that for
I
one
still think
title
the process
all day.
is right. Well, you trade it, but like, okay.
But that's with hindsight. That's with hindsight.
The thing is also, like, I am just a believer that if you let Luka ride out his career with the Mavs, they get a title at some point.
I agree. I agree with you. I'm with you, and that's why I'm saying, like, the Mavs still lost this trade. It's a mind-boggling trade. I thought it was fake for the first, like,
So did I.
So did we.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think, like, until I see Luka in a Lakers uniform, I don't believe it. But that's kind of where my mind goes. It's like, would you rather be the Jazz, 20 years of contention, and you just get remembered for losing to Michael Jordan? That's what you get remembered for.
No, I wouldn't. But also, like, I think that their process to write it out was right because they were in the mix every single year in the 90s.
And without Michael Jordan,
and I would run that back.
Yeah, without Michael Jordan, you'd be a back-to-back champ. I agree with that. But so my argument is, Mavs lost this trade. If they win a championship this year or next year, they didn't lose the trade.
That's the only way they don't. And with the new
made the finals last year. Like, I still disagree. I still think it's a bad trade. Now, it doesn't go down maybe as one of the worst trades ever if they do win the title.
No, he's right though. That's the only way because
that's the only way you stomach it. And still, I think you look at that and you say, well, we were in the finals last year. Luka's a better player than AD. We still could have won the title, and then we could have had another 8 years of contention, whereas now AD and Kyrie are corpses.
Well, now that we've had time where interviews have been done with the front offices and stuff like that, and we've had new reporting since we went live, I mean, I don't know any other way to dress this up other than to say that Nico Harrison is coming off as the dumbest human being alive. And so there's only a few logical reasons that I circle back to with why he would have done this. I think Nico maybe owes like somebody a lot of money, and this was the only way that he could like save his life was that they said, "Hey, you have to trade Luka to the Lakers," or they have his wife and kids hostage in a basement somewhere, and they made this go through. I mean, those are the only like logical things that I circle back to because me and Tyler were talking about this briefly before the show started. But like the more and more, I was listening to this on the way to the gym yesterday, the interview. The more and more he kept talking, the more and more my skin just crawled like out of disgust. He did not consult Jason Kidd. He didn't consult anybody else. And he's like, there's so many aspects of this that just make him sound so incomprehensibly stupid. Like, and we said this on the show, in any instance where you trade Luka Doncic, you call and this is just regular process. This is what I would do if I was the Dallas Mavericks GM and I had Luka Doncic as an asset. I don't care if the rumor gets out that I'm trading Luka Doncic. I've already made that call. I'm calling all 30 teams and I am telling them, hey, this is my new number one offer. What are you going to give me? I'm holding Luka as a ransom, and I'm saying that every team has given me this. What are you going to give me? And I'm getting back the haul of all hauls. That's what leaves an empty pit in your stomach is the fact that Luka Doncic is one of the greatest basketball assets ever, and you got back pennies on the dollar.
And what makes it so bad is he said he views the future as 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. He doesn't even care, bro.
And then he said 10 years down the line, me and Jason will be buried. It's like, what?
I thought that was maybe the most telling quote about the biggest problem that all GMs across all sports have, which is that these are dudes who do not have permanent job security. They are trying to keep their own jobs, which means, of course, they are going to overly prioritize the short-term window because they're not thinking what's in the best interest of the franchise 10 years from now. They're thinking what's in my best interest.
But how does this not get him? I feel like this is the most fireable offense of all time.
I think that Nico Harrison is a complete insane person. And I think that the only explanation is that he is the single lowest person on Luka Doncic in the world. And he views Anthony Davis as a better win-now player, which I disagree with strongly, and I think 99% of people would disagree with. And he literally does not care about anything beyond that. He doesn't care about 3+ years from now. And it seems like he has real issues with Luka's character, with his conditioning, right? We heard reports from the Mavs that Luka was up to 270. We saw a video of him getting off the Lakers' private jet. Didn't really look like he was 270 to me, but I just think Sirat put it beautifully. Do you guys know her? I think she works for The Ringer. She's an NBA writer. And she said that basically every single NBA trade, you're managing short-term and long-term value in relationships, right? And the Lakers broke up with somebody who they really love and value because they knew it was the best thing for them long-term. The Mavs killed their baby to stop him from crying for 5 minutes. Like, that's what they did here. This is a complete oversight of the fact that this is one of the greatest talents ever and that he's 25 years old. And then if you want him to be more serious about conditioning, talk with him about it. Like, the notion that you can't improve, you can't get more serious about winning when you're 25, it is such a rarity to have won a title by this age. And he already got you to the brink. He got you to the finals. So I do really think this is going to go down as one of the worst moves in NBA history, because the only path out, as you said, Tyler, would be a Mavs title. And I still think it'd be a bad trade, but I think it's a real long shot that Dallas wins the title. And I do think that they got worse. None of the explanations make sense to me. They're saying this is a win now move. Okay, well, in terms of win now potential, you just got worse. Luka is better than AD. I think that your entire identity was very much dependent upon having these two elite creators with one absolute superstar. Now I think, yeah, your defense is going to be nasty, but you've got AD playing at the 4, which I don't love. Spacing is something of a concern. Creation is a concern. You're asking Kyrie to carry a big load. Like, that to me is not a team that is as well equipped to win the title as Dallas was with Luka at all. The argument that it's about availability, right? Well, that doesn't make sense when you're putting the shoulders of your franchise now on Anthony Davis, who's been healthy for the most part for a year and change, although ironically he is hurt right now. But, like, there is no reason to believe that he is more of a sure thing to be on the floor than Luka Doncic. Money. You're going to be playing Anthony Davis $63 million in 2028. There is no world in which a Luka contract doesn't age better than that.
Carson, you tweeted about this. Can you elaborate on the point that you were making about the Mavericks standing with their draft picks as well in their new timeline? Because I thought that was a terrific point.
Yeah, man. That's the other thing. They've just obliterated their future, because even if you are looking at the Mavs as a team that's in contention for the next 2 or 3 years, and again, I think it's a real long shot that they could win the title with the level that like OKC and Boston are at, they've obliterated their future because they don't have their own first-round pick from 2027 to 2030. They've either dealt it outright or they're on the wrong side of a swap in every one of those years. In 2027, at the start of that window, Kyrie is 35, 80 is 34. By the end of it, you're talking about 39-year-old Kyrie, 38-year-old Anthony Davis. Like, they are going to be in such a horrible place in several years. They are going to be in the cellar of the NBA. And with Luka Doncic, they always would have been competitive. They always would have been in the mix. They would have been at worst a move away from contention, right? Like we saw for the one down season where they traded for Kyrie midway through and they missed the playoffs. And then the next year, they are in the NBA Finals. That's what I can't fathom about this. And maybe the funniest thing is that with the complaints that Nico Harrison does have about Luka, right, culture stuff, whatever, conditioning, if there were ever motivation to get Luka to clean up that stuff and become the absolute best version of himself, this is it. Mm-hmm. This is it. Being booted from the franchise that you viewed yourself as the face of for your entire NBA career, oh my God, they might have just spawned a different level of demon Luka Doncic, which is just the craziest part, maybe, of it all.
How do you come down on that, Tyler? Do you think the Mavericks are also effectively worse?
I think, well, what's weird to me about this is the fact, like, you brought up them not shipping it around the league. I think Nico Harrison, so from what I can kind of gather from what's come out, is they went to Giannis first. That's who they wanted. And honestly, might be a hot take, I wouldn't have been mad at that at all. If they swapped Luka for Giannis, like, I think the Mavs with Giannis would probably be the best team in the league. Like, I feel pretty confident about that. And
would have been a lot better than what they did.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So then I think the next guy was like, well, Giannis is off the list. Let's go to the next two-way guy. It's Anthony Davis, or I guess Wembanyama, but that's not. Right. You're not kidding. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, Anthony Davis is our next guy. Let's go get him. Call the Lakers. And then it works. And then it's like, why was it one player? Why couldn't you go to the Rockets and say, give me Amen and Şengün? Or like,
bro, in a boatload of picks.
Yes, 3 firsts.
There's so many options. You could have remained a competitive team and still set yourself up for a future if you have to trade Luka. You still don't have to trade Luka. Yeah. You didn't have to trade Luka. But if you absolutely have to, there are pathways to remain a very competitive team and then still get young players back, and you still have a future there. Back to your point, though, about the Mavs still being in contention. I might just be a contrarian. but I think this move was made with 4 teams in mind, specific matchups. I think they thought in their head, if we get back to the finals and we face Boston, they're going to do the exact same thing that they did last year, and we don't have a counter anymore. Like, they're going to put Tatum on the 5. They're going to switch everything. Luka and Kyrie are going to have to shoot like 50% from 3 for us to win this series. I think they just kind of had that in their head. And to me, AD is like the strategy breaker. Like, Boston cannot do that now that you have AD because he's too good of a post player. And then also AD brings their defense to an entirely different level with the versatility with the ground coverage. So I think they view this as, okay, now we match up better with Boston. On the OKC side of things, I honestly think it could just be irrational confidence. With the way they played against OKC the last 2 times, I genuinely think they believe they can beat OKC without Luka. And it's because of, like, PJ Washington turning into a star against OKC, the way they can overwhelm them with size and rebounding and things like that. And then, again, adding AD just upgrades all of that. I think they look at Denver. Now they have 2 bodies to throw at Jokic, and they can do what Minnesota did with Cat and Gobert. They look at Cleveland as a potential finals matchup. 2 bigs. You can match up with both of them now. I almost think they are, like, willing to get worse as a team to match up better with the top dogs. Like, they think they can still beat a Memphis or a Houston, and maybe they still match up worse. That's just kind of where I'm kind of, like, putting myself in the mind of Nico Harrison and saying, like, this is how I think it works, because for all of the flaws you mentioned, the spacing, kind of an issue, but I will say some of the spacing concerns don't worry me when you account for the fact that Gafford, AD, and PJ is the best offensive rebounding front court since, like, the 90s. Like, they're going to get so many second chance opportunities. The creation is what worries me a lot, and I think they kind of need to go out there and get a secondary ball handler for Kyrie, because, like, right now their best options are Dinwiddie and Quentin Grimes. Not ideal at all. But in terms of, dude, that PJ, AD, Gafford front court, even if they don't run that many minutes together, instantly becomes one of the best rebounding and rim protecting front courts we've seen in a very, very long time. And I think Dallas is banking on the fact that they'll be a top 2 or 3 defense, and then Kyrie and AD will just give you enough offense. Because for all of Kyrie's flaws, like, I still think he's good for, even against the best defenses, like a semi-efficient 22 points. And then it's like, maybe that can get you there. I don't know.
How many teams win a title with that as their lead perimeter creator's production when he's not a very good playmaker? He's just a fine playmaker.
Yeah, that's the problem. Like, I don't think they're a tier inner circle contender, but I think the idea was, now we have a curveball, because if there's one thing you can't game plan for in basketball, it's size and athleticism. You either have it or you don't. And now they have more of that than probably any of the top 4 contenders.
It's an interesting point. Specifically, the matchup that I'm really, really excited to see if we were to get it in the playoffs would be them against Denver, because we can talk about what Minnesota did. This is definitely the best built to defend a Jokic that we've ever seen. Like, so that would be really interesting. But big picture, when it comes to all of these points, man, like, to me, the best version of a Dallas team was going to be, hey, let's get bigger in the front court. Let's get more physical. Let's get more athletic. Let's improve on the glass, which is what they did. Drafting Lively, bringing in Gafford, bringing in PJ Washington. Let's get to that place where we can be a good team defense and we can compete in all those physicality and athleticism areas. And then let's ride this incredible offensive creation from the backcourt. That's going to make us a really balanced elite team. That's how we can get over the hump and win a title. I don't think you win a title with this offense. Like, I don't disagree. They are now better equipped to make life hard on all of these other contenders, right? But that's really focused on the defensive end of the floor, the physicality areas of the game, the rebounding aspect of the game. I still think to win a title, you either need that A++ creator, or you need a Boston Celtics, a Cavs level of aggregate offensive skill where it's everybody can make decisions, everybody can shoot, everybody can put the ball on the floor. They have neither of those things. I do think the spacing is going to be a problem. If you just swap the three-point production that they sent out for the three-point production that they're bringing in, they'd be 28th in the league in threes made with this current roster. And I just don't think Kyrie is carrying that load as a number 1 option. He's built to be a number 2, man. Like, with all of his pure scoring ability, with his ability to play off ball, it's an incredible role for him. Once you ask him to be your number 1, well, then you see, okay, the playmaking isn't there. The easy stuff for him offensively, just with the fact that he can't get to the rim or the line at a very high rate. Like, all of that stuff costs you. And listen, AD will still be their number one scorer, but is AD an offensive number one? No, not with the fact that he's not creating in that way. So that's my big concern with this.
And
for the short term, for the long term, that's the real big problem. Obviously, is they gave up Luka fucking Doncic.
Yeah, when we're just looking at the short term, I also think it's a problem too when, the Lakers just objectively have better spacing, and that's been a big reason of why AD's been able to dominate offensively this season, is because he doesn't have to worry about guys. That's really where I worry about Dallas, and I'm going to give you credit, Tyler. You talked me more into it just now than. Like, you spun it way more positively than I've looked at it through any lens, because I think that is their weapon. I was failing to see any silver lining, but I do like how they match up defensively. I like their size and athleticism. I mean, it's going to be hellish to score on this team, but my concern is offensively in the half court. Well, one, AD's availability and consistency. This is the most consistent and available he's ever been, so I think those are less of concerns now. But more importantly, it is the fact that when you're running him with lineups with Lively and Gafford, I am afraid just that they're going to be able to send really, a ton of extra attention his way. In those minutes with P.J. Washington, you're just going to be able to divert attention to a Kyrie and an Anthony Davis. And I don't know if those guys are going to be able to be, one, as good enough playmakers as they need to be to make the defense pay, and two, if the surrounding shooting talent around them, I get that they have Clay, PJ can get hot, he's been better as a three-point shooter this year, right? They've got Najee Marshall. So I would still like if Dallas would make two more moves. I'd like to get again, these are assets that are hard to come by, but a reliable shooting wing, another one, like a flamethrower.
Cam Johnson, you have assets.
Hey, we've been saying it for Carson's been saying it for OKC for a while now. But like you mentioned too, another ball handler. I like Spencer Dinwiddie. Some games,
yeah.
I don't like Spencer Dinwiddie in all games. I don't like him being like, this is my, or like a Jaden Hardy. Like, they're good spot guys. You know what I mean? Like here and there. But I don't want them to be like my workhorse, reliable perimeter creators. So the Mavericks aren't dead, but there are still some key areas that I would really like for them to improve in.
My big thing is I think it'll take me a week to get like a test. I need to see, because I think AD and Gafford will start games together. I don't think they're going to close a lot of games together. It just depends on matchup. Like, if they want the double big look for a certain defensive idea, I think they'll close games. But I think it'll be a rotation pattern where it's like, okay, they start the games together, one of them stays in, and then they just stagger the rest of the game, and then AD closes. I think Kyrie and Gafford are going to play I think Gafford's going to play all of his minutes with Kyrie. That two-man game is really, really good. Especially like when Kyrie's the lead guy, like that, and I would expect that to be against opposing bench units. I think they can do some fun things in the AD Lone Star minutes where it's like Klay Thompson coming off a split action for AD is still really scary in 2025. And it's like, I would expect a lot more AD post play. I don't love Dinwiddie as a lead playmaker for the bench, but again, like, that's just kind of what it has to be. The thing for me is those minutes with AD and Gafford. If you can make them function offensively, that is your superpower. And what I'm waiting a week to see, a week from when AD plays his debut, is he a good enough decision maker to make Gafford in the dunker spot a viable offensive setup? Because if so, you can just do what Mobley and Allen do, and you will be fine offensively.
I'm probably not as high on that configuration as you are. And that's the other thing, right? Like, Derek Lively is going to be back in a month or a month and change. Like, long term, that's the vision. I think they are going to be double big almost the whole time, or they're going to trade Gafford. Like, this is the team that we have praised for having 48 quality minutes of center play before adding Anthony Davis. And of course, Anthony Davis, in his eternal chase to play the four, said, that's where I want to go. I mean, I know he didn't actually have anything to do with this deal. That's what we've been told. But, like, I don't think AD is in any way at his best at the four. I think he is clearly better at the five. I think he absolutely can anchor your defense as the five. I think that spacing is better for him offensively. And he's going to be playing a ton of minutes at the four now.
I think defensively he's at his best at the 4, and it's just because of the versatility aspect.
Sure.
Here's what I compared it to in my video. I think this Mavs team has a very similar front court setup defensively to the 2022 Celtics, where they're gonna pre-switch everything to keep Gafford on the baseline like Rob Will was, and he's just gonna play cleanup. And then AD is their Horford, where it's like AD can switch, he can hedge.
Sure.
He can drop. He's an elite rebounder. And then PJ Washington is kind of your Tatum variable, where it's like, we need you to defend a post guy. We need you to play at the point of attack, whatever the case may be. The difference for me is that I think it's basically like the 2022 Celtics front court, but with way better rebounding. Way better rebounding. And that's kind of how I feel about it. Offensively, I think it's, like I said, it needs to be leaves. I don't know what I'm looking for. I need to see it is basically what I'm getting at. I think the AD... The interesting thing with AD specifically is that I do think out of pick and roll situations, he's one of the best in the league at utilizing the short mid-range with like push shots and quick jumpers. Yeah. And I think Kyrie's best pass as a playmaker is the shovel pass. So I do think they can put teams in a tough spot. Like in the past, OKC has consistently hedged Kyrie. They want Kyrie to get rid of the ball and pick and roll. Getting the ball to AD with a 4-on-3 consistently and Gafford's your vertical spacer, I feel kind of good about it. And it's just, like I said, I need to see it, though. I need to see it.
Yeah, I think that AD is going to have to show a lot as a short roll passer. He's done a couple of lobs to Jackson Hayes this year, but in the minutes that he's played with Jackson Hayes over the last 2 years, not a big sample size. It's like 150-something minutes, but the Lakers are like a -5 net team. AD's true shooting percentage in those minutes is like 56. Like, I just think he takes a hit offensively when you force him to play with those sort of spacing constraints. And that's my concern. Really, all of my concerns here are about the offense. I think this defense is going to be phenomenal. Now, you're talking about the 2022 Celtics. The one thing I would say is I don't think that PJ Washington is very close to a Tatum-level defender, and maybe that's another area where I feel like this team is constantly going to be negotiating between, are we prioritizing our perimeter defense or are we prioritizing the fact that now we desperately need spacing? Like, coming into this year, I wanted the Mavs to start Najee Marshall over Klay Thompson because I was like, Najee is so much better as a defender. He's such a nice do-it-all wing. He can attack closeouts. He can play make. He gets to his floater game. And you're pairing him alongside Luka and Kyrie. Prioritize the defense and the versatility. Now I'm like, Klay Thompson is a must start for this basketball team because you just need the shooting that much. And then I love Najee, but PJ's in all likelihood going to start at the 3. And it's like, I can't hate on that because you need that shooting more. But they have a really good group of two-way wings in totality because I haven't even mentioned Quentin Grimes and I haven't mentioned Max Christie, who they get back. Like, that's a really solid group.
Hooper, man.
Solid ad. But the thing is, like, with all of the dudes who you feel like are giving you that real plus defense, you also have questions about their offensive production. And in a world without a Luka Doncic, that becomes much more difficult to sustain if your goal is to win the NBA title.
Let me ask you this. How do you feel about a closing lineup of Kyrie, Christie, Marshall, PJ, and then AD at the 5? Like, I feel like that's a nasty two-way lineup.
I like it. Is it better than what the Thunder have to offer at full strength? And maybe that's unfair because I didn't think the Mavs were better to begin with. I do like that. But, like, do you think a trade is coming at some point then with one of the bigs? Because, like, they have Gafford, Lively, and AD. Those guys are too good to not all play 20-plus minutes a night. Yeah,
I wonder if Lively's they view Lively as a tradable asset, and then maybe you trade what do other teams value Lively as? Because I think...
Why would you guys give up Lively over Gafford?
Just because I think Lively's more valuable because he's only like 20 years old or 21. Yeah. You get a better return. That's kind of how I feel
Logan,
about it.
I don't know if you've heard, he's actually developing quite a 3-ball.
He's the next Giannis as well.
He's the next Giannis.
Just because, I guess that's fair. I was like, well...
He's definitely the better asset. But, dude, it kills me. I saw a tweet of somebody being like, no more Luka lobs. Welcome to the real NBA, Derek Lively. And it made me chuckle because he has gotten so overrated.
I feel like the other GMs know that he was, I don't want to say a Luka merchant, but, like, he won't be the same type of player unless you have that playmaker. But then it's like...
entire offensive basis.
Yeah, it's like, who do you get? What team would view Lively as that valuable of an asset? Like, besides, like, Milwaukee. I think Milwaukee would love to pair him with Giannis, get some athleticism and size, but then it's like, who are you getting from Milwaukee? Gary Trent Jr.? Like, it's like, I don't know what team views Lively and would give you the return you need. Like, the Clippers really need a backup big, who do you want from the Clippers? Like, do you get Derrick Jones Jr. back?
Yeah.
It's like,
I think it's more likely that he goes to a younger team that is thinking, well, we want a good young center.
Well, I was sitting there going,
what asset are you getting back for now?
Why would the Mavericks want to trade away a young part of their core, but their timeline is drastically shifted?
Yeah.
And if they're willing to give up Luka Doncic, I think everything's on the table.
I mean, like, that's why I don't want to miss the forest for the trees here. I think it's fun and interesting that we're getting into the specifics, but, like, whether they have marginally gotten worse right now or significantly gotten worse or maybe stayed the same or maybe they're better for certain matchups, like, all of that is not secondary, is not tertiary. Like, it is so far below the fact that they have tanked their future. And that is the disaster of all this. And like I said, Nico Harrison must be the lowest guy on the planet when it comes to Luka Doncic and his value, and he must be the most short-sighted guy on the planet because he is literally only viewing the future as the next 3 years. But I do think that this makes them worse today. But yeah, they'll still be in the mix. They're still a good Western Conference playoff team. I just think Nico Harrison is a complete insane person. Everything about the process. I think some people are underrating Anthony Davis as an asset in all of their rage and fury and like acting like he's not a clear top 10 player. Yeah. And he is. And clearly their entire priority is winning now. So take issue with that. You take issue with the entire process, okay? To me, step one of trading Luka Doncic is absolutely insane. Then step two, this is not the haul that I would have wanted back, right? If I could have gotten 3 firsts, Andaman and Şengün, I don't think that's out of the question if you're the Rockets. This is Luka Doncic. You go to the Spurs, you get 6 firsts and Vassell and Castle, like whatever, right? Maybe OKC even. You could get an insane haul of picks.
No, like, dude, you can't give but you're giving the Death
But you
Star.
traded Luka Doncic. Like, that's the thing. Like, my first thought about the Spurs deal was like, or the Rockets deal. Oh, you can't give
They're
that
gonna
guy
win
up to a
every
division
title
rival.
for the next 20 years, bro.
You can't give up Luka Doncic in the first place. It doesn't
I
fucking
know.
matter who you trade him to.
I'm not an insane person.
Like, that's why I just don't care. At this point, I would just be like, if I'm at the place where I want to trade Luka, that's not a place I can
Nico
get to.
Harrison
I would just
cannot be
purely
found.
give me the best haul.
He cannot be safe in the streets of Dallas, right?
Dude, I don't think so. I mean, he's talking about burying himself. They're holding protests outside the arena.
Dude, I think he's got to wear a shiesty.
Conspiracy theories are developing, and I'm like, hold on. Maybe this makes more sense than the fact that Nico Harrison actually thought this was the best thing to do.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm still not over the whole idea of like the amount of potential players you could have gotten, because I don't know how teams value Luka Doncic. Like, I don't know how each team views him, but like, am I crazy for thinking you go to Memphis and you can walk out with like Bane and Jaren Jackson, or like Ja and Jaren Jackson?
Bro, you could ask whatever you want.
It's Luka Doncic. Like
the
dude.
fact that they didn't get the 2031 first is the funniest thing in the world to me. Rob was like, hey, we're not moving off that. And Nico was like, yeah, fair enough. I wouldn't either. Like, what?
Easily the funniest part of it all is when Nico went to Rob and Rob said, you're joking? You're joking, right?
Yeah, bro.
And the ownership apparently initially laughed at the idea. Like, Nico, everybody around you is laughing. You're not talking to your head coach.
And he goes, dude, the funniest part of the interview to me was when he goes, yeah, man, I just want to thank Rob Pelinka for not telling anybody and keeping this under wraps.
Yeah, bro, I think he wanted to keep this one close to the chest.
Rob played you like a fiddle.
Rob's running the nonchalant gimmick. The whole time he's like, he's celebrating every time they get off the phone.
I mean, if you twist my arm, I guess I'll take
exactly.
Luka.
Dude, my one friend who he's an IRL friend, so he's not like in the NBA space at all. Right when Underdog NBA tweeted the trade, he texted me a picture and said, realest trade of 2025. And then it turned out to be real.
Bro, like, I got a call from my friend, and I saw that he had sent the screenshot of the notification. I didn't even answer. I was like, bro, I'm in the gym right now. I'm not entertaining the idea that Luka just got traded to the Lakers. This, to me, has really been illuminating on how disastrous it is when you give the wrong person power and how unilateral the power of a GM can be if ownership doesn't have the balls to step up, or, like, this is a fully demonic process from Nico Harrison. Like, literally, I believe the only consultant on this trade was the voices whispering in the back of his head, or like some sort of evil advisor on his shoulder. I think this is as close as one man could come, and as one man has come in NBA history, to single-handedly destroying a franchise. Not just because the results are going to be so bad, but like, we're talking about the Kings trying to stay competitive, right? Just to keep their fan base engaged. You just traded away the Wonder Boy. You traded away the generational talent that everybody loved and would defend to the death even after, right? He didn't play a lick of defense in the finals last year and struggled. Like, the Mavs fan base loved Luka so much. And in no world were they mentally prepared for this outcome. And they will never forgive you for it. And they are going to be proven right for resenting you for this. But, like, they lost 15% of their Instagram following in a day, man. And, you know, that's not the measuring stick of all fandom, but look at Mavs fans. Like, people are contemplating if they want to abandon this franchise. That is just an unprecedented, catastrophic decision.
You know what I compared it to initially? It was like if the 2012 Thunder made the finals and then traded KD for Dwight Howard to pair with Harden and Russ. And KD at that point was like the most loved player in NBA history. It was like, there's
no comparison. There is no actual comparison. And that's what I've tried to really drill into people's heads, because, like, I was like, this is the craziest trade ever. And then some people were like, oh, recency bias much? And it's like, no, man. Every other trade where a player of this stature has been moved, every other downright superstar in their prime who has been traded wanted the trade. You go back to Kareem, right? And you go, oh my God, what a terrible trade. They got back 0 real assets. It's Junior Bridgman and Dave Myers. Oh, it's so terrible. Well, yeah, they had to trade him. He forced their hand. Wilt. The Warriors were 11-33. He wanted out. Like, I'm talking, you go all the way back to the 60s. Nothing like this has ever happened. KG put in his 12 years for the Timberwolves, and then he said, I'm out. So you can look at all those hauls and you say, oh my God, they still lost the trade. But the player demanded out. And the team was really struggling in a vast majority of those circumstances, with just a couple exceptions, like Shaq just being done with Kobe or what have you. This is a team that made the finals. This is a team that's roster was completely built to contend. This is a team whose superstar is 25 years old, and they gave up on him. I'll never wrap my head around that. It's the single worst process for an NBA trade that I can think of.
It's such an absurd trade that, like, I'm seriously entertaining the whole, like, conspiracy with, like, the super casino stuff, where it's like the Mavs are trying to, like, get
Nico owes somebody some money, man.
But that is interesting what Tyler's talking about, where the new ownership group is all in basically on building a super casino. And so they're like, if this isn't going to happen in Dallas, then we want to move to Vegas. We can't move to Vegas right now because the Mavs love the team and it's a big market and whatnot. But, like, if we just destroy the enthusiasm,
it's no longer Mark Cuban, right? It's like not. Miriam Adelson and Patrick DuPont or something like that. I think that's their two names.
And they were talking about how they want to build a casino in the arena where you can gamble live while watching the game.
And I think that actually makes sense. And when we're looking at the money, right? Because the money will tell you everything you need to know. I didn't know if Luka's contract came into play at all, but to me that didn't make any sense either, because it's like, who gives a fuck about $110 million when it's Luka Doncic? Like,
you're paying Anthony Davis $63
exactly. I'm giving Luka a blank check. So there's something off about this deal, dude. There's something very, very off.
That's why, like, I am not somebody who entertains conspiracy theories normally at all, but I did entertain the theory.
Yeah. Same.
Because it is so insane. But when I watch Nico Harrison speak, I think, oh no, this is just a crazy person. This is like an egomaniac who has no awareness of what the people around him think, doesn't value their opinions, thinks I'm just going to act as a sole person here representing this entire franchise and billions of dollars.
Went rogue. He went rogue.
He went rogue. And that's where I'm like, as an organization, you have to have fail-safes against that, apparently. And they don't have them.
Well, I just don't get how he didn't talk to. How do you not talk to the head coach? How do you not? How does this not go through channels of
my mind?
Of communication.
You know where my head goes with this whole thing is I feel like Nico Harrison kind of, and I could just be completely off base here. I could just be straight up hating, but I feel like he had like an existential crisis where he like came to terms with his mortality, and this is the only way he'd be remembered is if he made the most absurd.
Maybe, dude.
Most absurd, because now we're going to talk about Nico Harrison forever. I'm not going to lie, I barely knew who he was.
Confirmed basketball terrorist Nico Harrison.
Dude, it really just shows to me, like, wow, if one person has a really bad basketball opinion and they go unchecked, because that's the thing, right? There's somebody out there on Twitter who would say to you, oh, AD is better than Luka. I'd rather have AD than Luka. And then it turns out that the Mavs GM felt that way, and nobody put a stop to it, and there you go. That's the franchise-defining move, franchise-altering move forever. Man, it's just insane to me that you would focus on the negatives with Luka over the overwhelming positives. It's like you're talking about availability. This is the first extended stretch he's missed in his career. You're talking about conditioning. He averaged 34, 9, and 10 on 62% true shooting this year. And like conditioning, bro, like think about the seasons that Jokic has come into out of shape, right? Like this is something that happens with superstar players sometimes. They're allowed to get a little doughy and then they play their way into this unstoppable form. It's never been a real issue for Luka before. Outside of maybe the playoff run last year, you could argue conditioning was a factor, but he was also hobbled. He was also banged up. It's terrible beyond belief, beyond comprehension. I still can't believe it a couple days later. I really can't. And Mavs fans, I don't think will believe it for years because this is ruining the franchise, dude. This is ruining their future. It really is. This ain't the little itty bitty teeny tiny bowl. This is Super Bowl 59. Get it on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 59.
Scoring touchdowns is key to hoisting the Vince Lombardi Trophy, and you have a shot to score big by betting on them all at DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like a player to score 6. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick.
New DraftKings customers can bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code NERDS. That's code NERDS for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. I do want to look, though, at the short term here. We've discussed the Mavs a good bit with their current configuration, but now we've got all of these moves out west. We have obviously this trade involving both the Mavs and the Lakers, and then we have the Kings trade and the Spurs, like all these teams involved in trades. What does the full hierarchy out west look like to you guys right now if everybody is healthy when you're looking at a playoff run? Let's focus on the teams that have been reconfigured, but starting from the top, like Tyler, how many teams do you get to before you go to Dallas?
I think there's 3. I think the big caveat there was you said if fully healthy. So
Agreed,
I think
completely.
you've got OKC clear #1.
Yeah.
To me, if we're talking fully healthy, a pretty strong #2 is the Clippers. I think the Clippers are just ridiculously good. Then I'd go Denver, and then I think you get to Dallas. I think Dallas and Memphis is the discussion for 4, in my opinion. I think I'd go Dallas.
I agree. I actually think I'd go Memphis. The only reason is I just feel like I trust their offense just like a slight bit more. And that's my dilemma. 1, I would have Denver now concretely. 2, just because even with the Clippers and fully healthy, I agree with you fundamentally, Tyler. Like I think the Clippers at full strength are probably #2, but I'm not putting stock into that. But
No.
I would have the Clippers #3 even if fully healthy. I am quite high on Denver. Now they make that infuriating because their defensive effort is consistently repulsive, and just as a basketball team they need to take things more seriously. However, I do think what they found with Russ is big. I think their offense is the best in basketball. We're not talking about that now, but I would have Denver 2. Then I would have the Clippers 3, and some people took issue. I tweeted that out that I would have them above Dallas. They're an elite team defense, and I just think they have a clear path to being a better offense with Harden's playmaking, with Kawhi's elite scoring when he is available, with supporting cast production from guys like Norm and Zubats. Like the gap between Norm and Zubats as your 3rd and 4th best offensive players compared to what the Mavs have, it's a real gap to me. And then also the top 2 offensively is a lot better for the Clippers because Kawhi and Harden with his playmaking. Like I also just think it's a better fit. Kyrie and AD have some limitations. It's really the lack of playmaking between the two of them. But I would have Dallas 4. I think that Dallas is really good. I think they're going to be an elite defense. I think their front court is insane.
Why do you guys have
offensive concerns?
Why do you guys have them over Memphis so easily?
I think Memphis's offense in the half court against that Dallas defense is a disaster waiting to happen. I think your best half court option right now is a Jaren Jackson Jr. post up, and Anthony Davis is probably the best Jaren Jackson defender in the league. And so that's just kind of where I'm at. It's like Ja Morant trying to do what he does as a scorer against Washington, AD, and Gafford at the rim. Like, dude, he's not giving you no production in the half court.
Yeah.
And then you're relying on Desmond Bane to be like a 20-point per game guy, and he's kind of streaky. Yeah, I just feel like that's kind of where I'm at. I'm like, if Dallas really hones in on transition defense, which credit to Jason Kidd, the Mavs are always an elite attention to detail defense in the playoffs. I think they'll get back in transition. They'll force the game to play in the half court, and it's like Memphis's half court offense. It doesn't do it for me against that Dallas defense.
I understand that. I just think Memphis has good defensive answers for what Dallas is going to try to do offensively as well. Like, they've got defenders at every single level. Triple J and Edey, I think, are a good front line against AD and whoever the Mavericks tried out at the 5 spot. And then you're looking at Kyrie and Clay. Like, you're going to have some Marcus Smart minutes where he can D up them on the perimeter. And I just think Memphis has more quality basketball players. Like, I don't want to act like I've been super high on Memphis all year long or not. I've been skeptical about them all year, but I think I marginally prefer Ja as like my number one. But that's the problem is, I mean, Ja's best strength is getting to the hole, and Dallas is going to be able to take that away. I think that's a really tight matchup, but I think I marginally prefer Memphis.
For me, it's just the AD on Jaren variable. Like, I know Jaren's grown a lot as a player.
He bitched him in that last one, though.
Like, I know Jaren's improved a lot as a player, but if you go back to that 2023 series, like, the moment they put AD on Jaren, Memphis's offense was gone. It was just, they had nothing. They were scoring like 70 points.
Yeah, and Jaren is way, way better, but like... I saw you say you think he's a top 15 player, Tyler. Is that what I saw you tweet out?
I'm getting there. I remember last time we talked, I was like still on the Ja versus Jaren thing, and now I'm like, yeah, Jaren's outright their best player and probably a top 15 player. I'm pretty much there. I think Jaren's absurd.
Top 15 is high. I do think that Jaren is absurd, though. I think that he is probably just outside the top 20 for me. But he's a monster. He's infinitely better than he was in that playoff series. However, I agree with what you said. I mean, AD is an athletic counter for him in every way, right? In terms of strength, in terms of mobility, in terms of size. And that is a really tough matchup. So to answer your question, Logan, the reason I prefer Dallas is basically I think that their defense is more suffocating when it comes down to it. Both these teams, I have questions about their half-court offenses. Memphis's half-court offense is better than it's been in previous seasons. That's why I'm higher on them, but it's still certainly not an upper echelon half-court offense. I think both these teams are going to be kind of middling there. Although Dallas is probably a little bit better. Like, Dallas still has played like a top 10 offense in games that Kyrie plays this year, which I don't necessarily think is totally sustainable, and I have my concerns, but I still trust them a little bit more there. But defensively, I just think that this interior defense is going to be one of the best in a long, long time. And they have the combinations of perimeter defenders that can be a problem. And Logan, you said the quality basketball players point. Dallas is like maybe the one team where I don't really agree that that's a point in Memphis's favor, because I do like Dallas's depth that much, because they have 3 bigs who are so good, because they have 5+ real quality wings. And then obviously they have Kyrie
I think
in the
their
backcourt.
versatility is pretty even. I think Memphis has a lot of different combinations that they can go with their lineups.
My question with the Memphis versatility is the variable of the 5, because I don't think Jaren can play the 5 against AD. But then it's like, and then it's like Edey isn't a versatile big. Brandon Clark isn't a versatile big. So I kind of feel like that's a weird variable. But also, to your point about like you kind of trust Ja as a creator more than Kyrie maybe, or like as your lead guy, my argument would be that a lot of Memphis's guys, their offense relies on getting downhill. Like, even at this point, Desmond Bane's 3-point attempts are like cut in half, and he's like a legitimate slasher at this point. Like, I think he's attempting like 5 threes a game when he used to be like 8 or 9. So like he's been more of a slasher. Ja Morant, we know, is like 30% outside of the paint at this point. Like, it's just, that's where his scoring comes. Jaren Jackson Jr., pretty good floor spacer, still wants to get to that left hook, wants to get to the paint. Zach Edey can only score in the paint. And so, like, you go down the roster, and then it's like, okay, Memphis can do the same thing that Dallas does. They can zone in on the 2 bigs, shut down the space. But then it's like, you still have Kyrie, Clay, Quentin Grimes, like all these like 40% 3-point shooters. Like, I trust Kyrie as a shot maker to scrape enough offense more than I trust John Bane to produce what they do against that Dallas defense.
Yeah, I think against that Dallas defense is a key part of the equation. Yeah. I really do think that they are going
Although
to
I
be
do
a
wonder if
problem.
Memphis matches up a little bit better with some of the other high-end teams. Like, maybe I'm thinking too much about the specific matchup. Yeah, I think Memphis might match up better against Denver than Dallas does, because I feel like you can do the same thing with Edey on Jokic and then Jaren as your roamer, but then it's like Denver's transition defense is a problem, and now you have Ja Bane constantly pushing the pace. I don't think Aaron Gordon can really bother Jaren Jackson as a man-to-man defender, and that's if he's even in the starting lineup. So it's like, yeah, I
think AG's a pretty good Triple J defender.
But
He's not AD level.
No, it's like I feel like the idea of Aaron Gordon makes sense, but then Jaren really pushes everyone around that isn't like 7 foot. Like, did you see what he was doing to Giannis last night?
Yeah, and the touch aspect with him, just the ability to go over top of you is
Yeah.
pretty crazy and shoot 50+% on floaters. He hasn't been as ridiculous there as he was early in the year, but still really, really good. In terms of pure matchup, sure. However, to me, the Denver offense quotient, it just overwhelms anything that Memphis has, and that's such an important thing for me, believing in a half-court offense in the playoffs. That's the thing that has knocked Dallas down a peg for me. But I do have the Grizzlies at number 5.
Yeah.
Then, who do you have at number 6 in the West, Tyler?
Oh my gosh, this is where it gets really tough. I think I'd probably go Minnesota still. I don't feel good. I don't feel good about it. I don't feel good about it at all. I think I'm kind of between Minnesota and Sacramento for my 6 and 7.
Dude,
No.
Y'all call me crazy.
No. I just completely missed Houston. Houston's my 6.
Okay.
Houston's my 6, and then I go to the Sacramento and Minnesota.
This is fascinating. I think I've got the Lakers at 6.
I'm so low on the Lakers in the short term. That is the worst defensive team in the league. Probably.
Oh, it is.
I don't even care, man.
It's bad.
I think the Lakers are gonna get buckets, dude.
Their best big is Jackson Hayes.
Yeah.
If there's anybody that can make Jackson Hayes look like a playable 5, it's Luka Doncic, man.
Dude, the best defender in their starting lineup is Austin Reeves.
Well, they're gonna start DFS
No,
or
they
Vando.
should start DFS if they're serious.
They're not going to. They're going to start Rui.
That's
Okay,
that's ridiculous.
That changes my opinion. I couldn't believe when they went back to Rui.
Dude.
I'm hoping that they won't do that. I feel like JJ Redick is too smart for that. What if they get a playable starting center? If it's Robert Williams, if it's a Miles Turner, if it's a Clint Capella, if it's anybody in that sort of range, Tyler, then could you have LA in the 6th spot, or would you still be lower on them?
Yeah, I think it's fair because I think there's so much offensive firepower with Luka and LeBron, and I think the variable that people kind of overlook with Luka and LeBron is every era we get like 3 supercomputers. The Lakers would have 2 of them, and then Jokic is the other guy. It's like these guys read the game at just a level above the coaches, above the front offices, and if you have 2 of those guys in a 7-game, like, you have to get rid of them quick because the longer that series goes on, the more they figure stuff out. And it's like, if you get into a game 6 or 7 against Luka and LeBron, good luck. I don't care who you are.
Yeah. I think that this offense is just going to be incredible, but they need that starting caliber center. They do. Like, when I first saw this trade, I thought, hey, they get Luka. Like, obviously, the big deal for LA with all this, which we didn't even touch on, we just talked about what a disaster it is for Dallas, is that, like, holy shit, dude, they've been saved. They were just sort of sinking into the abyss long term, right? Once LeBron is gone, you're in this super mediocre spot with AD, and you don't really have a path to improve. Now they have been spared of all of that, and they will be a factor for years and years to come. That is way more important than whether or not they got better right now. Way more important that they have that guy for the next decade plus, which obviously Dallas has lost out on. Right now, though, I mean, this is like the weirdest roster in the NBA because Jackson Hayes is going to start. Like, I did a little bit of advocacy for a Maxi Kleber small ball 5 lineup where you're starting Luka, Reeves, DFS, LeBron, and Maxi. I don't think that they're going to do that.
But he's out for the year.
Maxi's not coming back at all this year?
I think he shut down. I'm pretty sure.
That's a huge.
I could be wrong.
That's a huge blow.
What? Is that true?
I thought so. I could be wrong, but I know he got surgery.
Yeah, he's out for a while. I don't know when he's coming back, but
thought
they
he was
don't say
shut down
out for the year. Well, that would be really
maybe not.
bad.
Maybe I'm thinking of someone else, but I thought I know he's out for a long time.
Yeah, he's got a broken foot.
That's what's tough. I think, honestly, best case scenario for LA is I think you go like Luka, Reeves, LeBron, Vando, DFS, and just use Vando as like a short roll guy and 5 out. And it's like, then you just kind of rely on Luka ISOs because Luka ISOs, I mean, honestly, best case scenario, now I'm kind of talking myself into it. This Lakers team could basically do what the 2020 Rockets did.
Mm-hmm.
And have like a small ball 5, like Vando is your Covington or your Tucker.
Yeah.
And then it's like, then we're going to have Luka ISO 20 times a game. LeBron's going to be a screener and short roll guy. Their offense is going to be really good.
I think their offense is going to be ridiculous.
Their offense is going to be awesome. Their offense is going to be really, really good. I guess the question is just, do they have enough aggregate defense to make like that sort of real micro ball thing work?
And that's where that's like I'm looking at like I brought up Sacramento. It's like, dude, what do you do against Sabonis if you're LA? Like Jackson Hayes can.
That's fair. It could be matchup dependent where they just get obliterated on the glass in a series.
Like imagine this LA team against the Washington AD and Gafford front court. We were just talking.
They're not getting a board.
No, they are literally just like fully betting on offense. All right, let's go 5 out. Let's space the floor and let's just create a ton of great shots. But yeah, man, like they don't even have that like low center of gravity dog who's undersized but can like give a big post.
DFS is the closest one.
Do you guys?
Yeah, and he's not even big like that. He's not like strong
Tucker.
like that.
Nothing
Yeah,
like
no.
I don't want to move off
Bring
Lakers talk if you guys got more, but do the Spurs not factor into your top 8 at
Not
all
yet.
after this move?
Not yet.
Well,
not yet.
they're not factoring into the 6th spot, at least for
No,
sure.
I don't have them here. I would still have Minnesota, I think, over San Antonio, but I think San Antonio's close to being in that. I think they're. Am I crazy for thinking that they're like maybe above Houston?
I think that's a little bit crazy. Yeah.
Houston's defense.
I mean, they've got two.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got the 2 best offensive players, I think, easily.
They do. They do.
Yeah.
But then, like, if you're just ranking the 10 best players in that series, how many does Houston have, man?
And
like
also,
at least
Houston's
6.
one of like 3 teams that can do the strategy of
They can
They
can
wing
defend
on
Wemby
Wemby,
well. You
push
are
him out.
right.
switch everything.
Yeah. They're
Also,
very
what about-
well built to
like,
defend Wemby.
Are we just out on Phoenix? Like, are they just?
Yes.
I
I'm
think
out on
Phoenix is cooked.
I'm out on Phoenix.
I think they're pretty cooked too. But I would still like. I think Phoenix is easily better than San Antonio.
Really?
Still. Yeah, I don't trust San Antonio's. I like the role guys moving forward, but like as a player right now, like Stephon Castle's not a good player yet. Straight up, just he's like 46% true shooting. Like you cannot play him in a playoff series. And same with Keldon Johnson, you can't play him in a playoff series. Sohan, probably not. Like,
it is worth pointing out that this is a roster that last year won 22 games and then like hasn't improved that much outside of Wemby's improvement on paper. Obviously,
Wemby's almost
like those additions matter, but
Wemby's almost a one-man defense. I mean, you didn't give up a ton of real roster depth like in the trade, and I mean you're injecting a 25-point per game scorer in here. I mean, I just think San Antonio got so much better overnight.
I agree with you. I just think
Wemby's so much.
I think Wemby being such an absurd floor raiser makes us think the sum of the parts is better than it is. And with like attention to detail of a playoff series, like I almost compare it to the 2022 Nuggets where Jokic made them look like they'd be like a legit playoff team. And then obviously they faced Golden State, so it's kind of a bad matchup. But like they just looked completely like they didn't belong at all. And it was just because one player can only do so much. And I think Fox is that second guy. Yes, he does. But against a defense like Houston, like I don't see it.
Yeah, I would bank on Houston's defense too. And again, like if you're talking, okay, who is the Spurs' third best player at this point?
It's Chris Paul.
Like it might be Chris Paul. And then the healthy Rockets have Amen, and they have Şengün, and they have Van Vliet, and Dylan Brooks is having quite a good season. And
Jabari Smith back.
They have Jabari Smith. They have Tari. Like, I'm certainly not the biggest Jalen Green guy, but if I'm comparing Jalen Green to Devin Vassell, like right now, like give me Jalen Green, man. Give me Jalen Green. So that's the thing. I just think there's a roster gap. I have concerns about Houston, even though I love Amen more than I love my own family. I really, truly do. Like, half-court offenses that are bad don't win in the playoffs. The Rockets are a bad half-court offense. They are significantly worse in the half-court than Memphis or Dallas or these teams that we already expressed concerns about. They have real fundamental problems there. I still think I have them at 6 right now, though. Now, if the Lakers find that capable center, they go above the Rockets for me in a heartbeat, because then it's like, okay, hold on. If this team can be 22nd in defensive rating, I'm in on them being that 6th team in the West, because I think that their offense can be that great. I mean, Luka and LeBron having two processors, playmakers of that caliber, like you said, Tyler, but also I think they can complement each other. I think the two-man game with them can be really, really cool. I'm excited to see that for Luka. I'm excited to see, like, can he beat some of the off-ball allegations where he's already improved marginally, but like playing alongside a creator of LeBron's caliber, can he do the Austin Reeves stuff, ghost screening? Why not? Why couldn't he do that?
Those are probably the two players too who also are the best at mismatch hunting. So that's just gonna have they're gonna have a mismatch at all times. Like every time they come down the court, there's gonna be a mismatch.
It's insane. And you double and they can make every single read in the book. And there should be a lot of shooting around them in totality. So I'm extremely high on the offense. That's why I say if you give me a capable defensive center, or if they got Miles Turner, he's not the best defensive center. He's capable, but he's a really good offensive player. Like, then I think this offense would also just be even nastier. Yeah, no.
He's hooping. Respect Portland.
Don't care.
7-3 in their last 10.
Donovan Clingan better.
Dominating's a walking 2010, bro. Respect Portland. Respect dominating, man.
I will respect Portland. I will not respect dominating. I would never move for him. However, I will respect Donovan Clingan. I will respect Robert Williams. And those are the guys who I'd be looking for. I mean, they're not going to get Clingan, but that would be amazing.
Do you guys think that Luka could extend LeBron's career longer?
Maybe marginally.
Like, I'm just saying, I was thinking about this last night. Like, if Luka can really take on that number one offensive burden in the regular season, like every single night, and LeBron can play this sort of OG, just unk style of basketball where he posts
power
up.
forward, Braun.
He doesn't, he's not handling a whole lot. It's mostly him going on the low block and posting up and trying to draw attention and get easy looks and playmaking. And then, you know what? He just takes such a big step backwards offensively that he can exert himself more defensively and just be in I feel like with AD, LeBron still had to initiate so much from the perimeter. And I just think that, I don't know, maybe LeBron could pick his spots enough to where, I don't know, maybe we squeeze an extra year or two out of LeBron.
And you know what? On the LeBron point, too, is like over the course of 82 games, I think his value has pretty much deteriorated. But every time there's like a big game, he clearly still has that switch.
Completely agree.
The Knicks game the other night, like that was literally just like LeBron. That was the LeBron we know.
Yeah.
So I think and then it's like then you have an even fresher LeBron in the playoffs. Yeah.
It's fun, man. I hope that we get to see multiple years of it. I don't know what to expect from LeBron. I get it. They're not going to win a title in this current window. But I would just really love to see it as a basketball fan. I think it's such a cool pairing. And I do think that you make a good point, Logan. Like, it does alleviate the offensive burden on LeBron, which he's already been trying to do more and more. Like, hey, Austin Reeves, why don't you do a little bit more? But this is Luka Doncic we're talking about. This is a top 4 player on the planet. So I want to be kind of optimistic about the Lakers for this year. I just need to see that move for the center. And I feel like it's coming.
I also feel like it could be even just like a year or two down the line. Like, I don't know how much of LeBron you have left, but like, this is the dream destination for any free agent big man. Like, I'm going to go to LA. I'm going to play for the Lakers, and I'm going to play off of Luka and LeBron. I'm going to get myself the biggest contract I'll ever, like, dude.
Yeah.
Like, if they are just patient with it, like, that guy's going to fall into their lap.
But also, like, why can't they make the move right now? They have the 2031 first, man. They held on to it. The Mavs didn't need it. They were happy with the haul they got. So, like, that's an actual bargaining chip still.
I was talking to Sean Davis about this, my co-host, because he's a Lakers guy. Right. He was saying, like, ideally, they move Austin Reeves and get a big, because Austin Reeves and Luka's kind of a weird backcourt pairing, and Reeves is on a very good contract, so he's an asset. And I was like, ideally, it would never happen, but, like, Reeves is getting paid similar money to Jared Allen. Like, how much differently would we be talking about the Lakers right now if it was Luka, LeBron, Jared Allen?
Very differently. But that's impossible. But Logan and I discussed on our live on Saturday night, like, what if they did a Reeves-centric deal for Miles Turner? I still think that's worth doing just because
I don't think Indiana even entertains it, though. They don't have a big.
I agree. That's what my hold up was.
About that.
Like, they have no
forgetting
reason
that for Indiana's roster, it makes no sense.
And Indiana has so many guards.
Yeah, they do. No,
I mean, I was thinking about
Logan and I did this exact same thing. I just keep wanting it to, because the value is there in a vacuum. It's not there for Indiana.
You're not alone. Sean wants Turner so bad. He wants Turner so bad.
I was thinking about a bargaining chip with, like, one of the lower teams in the league, like maybe like the Pelicans, and I don't think this is like the best basketball fit, but you like dangle Reeves in that first for like Like a DeJounte Murray and an Eves Missy or something like that, bro.
I thought you were gonna say Zion.
Oh, I mean, that would be hot. Look, dude. Look.
Bro.
We also said this on our live. I don't want to beat a dead horse. I can't say shit no more about no Lakers jersey swaps or they can't get no players. Rob Pelinka got Luka Doncic. Everything is firmly on the table now.
Could you imagine if the Lakers got Luka and Zion and both were just in great shape, great conditioning, stayed healthy?
That would fire me up.
I would have smacked a Lakers fan if they had said something like that 5 years ago. Man.
Yeah.
Logan, the thing with what you just said is you can't make the contracts work.
Oh, that's fair.
It's
That's
just
fair.
too big of money, and I don't know. Maybe Reeves in a first would be enough for them, just because I think the Pelicans have to be pretty unhappy with how.
I'm just trying to think about teams in a desolate, dark spot.
I was gonna say Minnesota has to choose a direction with what they want to do, and Gobert's seeing a pay decrease, I think, in a year. So like that could be an option.
North of $40 million. Like what contracts?
I don't know though, man. A one-man defense like Gobert, I feel like changes things for me.
I'm just talking about logistically. You have to give up Rui, you have to give up Reeves, and you give up Gabe Vincent. And then I think you're like basically there.
I mean, and then you go that first
in Minnesota. Is there a better
Minnesota
offensive fit for Gobert than Luka and LeBron?
No. Oh my God. Holy lob.
Might be a 20-point per game scorer, man.
No, that would move the needle for me. But like, what's realistic? It's more realistic that like they go out there and they get a Robert Williams or whatever. Who it's always a gamble whether or not he's healthy.
I feel like Rob's pretty attainable though. It's not like the Blazers need him.
No, they already have Duop Reith. They don't need as many centers as they have.
I've been hearing Mark Williams, but I don't know why the Hornets would want to do that deal.
Yeah,
dude, there's so many bigs that I can just picture. Like, dude, like imagine Zubats. Like that'd be such a beautiful fit.
Dude, it's the funniest thing because like for years, it feels like such a major talking point around the NBA has been like that, just like the solid lob threat defensive big. Like that's the most replacement level skill set ever. You don't overpay that guy. You don't overdraft that guy. The Lakers now.
Capella. It's Capella. That's the guy.
Well, we talked about that.
Yeah. Capella's such a bad player though. Like besides the like it's so harsh, but like besides
they just need somebody playable.
Besides the fact that he can catch a lob, like dude, he can't even make a lay.
It's a win for them.
He has worse touch than Gobert.
He is a horrible finisher. It's still a win for the Lakers. The alternative is Jackson Hayes.
True.
It's a win for them. And the Hawks, I think, would be willing to do that because they have Onyeka, who's better. Like, I would be very happy with that if the Lakers did it, and they would be my number 16. Oh, wow.
Bro, I would explode. I would spontaneously combust.
Okay, so for now, I'm not going to have the Lakers in my 6th spot just because I need to see that move. But the second I see it, they are my number 16. I'm going to have Houston 6 for now. I'm still going to have the Lakers 7 just because the Timberwolves gross me out with their offense. But their defense, although it's not last year's, is still elite. They still have Anthony Edwards. They still have solid depth on that roster. So I'm going to have Minnesota 8.
Okay, yeah, so what did I say? I had 6 Houston. I go 7
Houston.
Minnesota, 8 Sacramento.
Okay.
9, I'm still going to go Phoenix over LA until I see the move. And it's just because the way Booker's been playing recently, I'm kind of back in. Like, Booker's been playing out of his mind.
Back in?
Back in on them being, like, just like a winning team. They're not going to win a series. They're not going to win a series, but, like...
That's true. We're talking about the 9 seed in the West.
Right, we're talking about a team that could win a playing game and then get to the next playing game.
I would... just bet on the Luka LeBron combination. I think their offense in totality is going to be a lot better than the Suns' is, and I think both teams are pretty disastrous defensively.
So I go
Nick Richards though.
Yeah, 10 LA, and then what? Then you get to like San Antonio, Golden State, Portland.
I think I am conflicted between the Spurs, the Kings, and the Suns. Honestly, I'm keeping the Suns out of this whole thing. I have conflicted feelings about that because I don't love any of these teams as they're currently constructed. I'm going to go, honestly, with the Kings at 9. I do like the LaVine fit. I think that they are still a really good offense. And then I'm going to go with the Spurs at 10. I'm excited to see Fox and Wemby. Realistically, the Suns have the path to being a better team because they have Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. But honestly, outside of the top 2, whose roster do I prefer? We're talking about how the Spurs don't have the roster yet. Neither do the Suns, bro. The Suns roster is an abomination, especially in terms of the fit that they've put around those guys. I'm going to bank on Fox and Wemby.
What makes it interesting is like when we get to like 10, 11, 12, I almost am not even thinking about the playoffs at all because it's like I'm thinking about like regular season, like getting
so deep.
You have to get
getting the seed. But like in a playoff series, if it's just like 10 versus 11 and it's like a playoff series, I kind of feel like I'm betting on Draymond and Steph to beat most of these teams in a series, like regardless of how bad the Warriors are.
I mean, I was going to ask, the Warriors are the biggest loser of the trade deadline right now, right?
Yeah, they're a big loser, man. And they've lost a lot of trade deadlines in recent years. Because apparently they're out on Jimmy, which I can't even really blame them for. LaVine was a much better asset.
I think it's really close between where, call me crazy, and I know what Jimmy can do in the playoffs, but I actually think it's, and I know he's not as consistent, but I think it's kind of close between like him and Wiggins, like the value that you can get night to night from both of those guys. Like Wiggins still has juice some nights.
No, Jimmy's still really good though.
Over 82 games. Over 82 games, I see it.
I'm just saying for like in a playoff setting, obviously I'd rather have Jimmy, but then like external factors come into play, like the fact that Jimmy is making so much money.
Yeah, and he's gonna miss 30 games. And, he is apparently a locker room concern to the Warriors. That's been some of the reporting, which I don't blame them for saying that. It's
almost like 4 or 5 different teams have had this exact same experience.
Yeah.
I differ on you guys. I go LA 6. I go Houston 7 because I'm just banking on Luka and LeBron. I have a hate-love relationship with Minnesota, but I'll put them at 8.
You love Ant, you hate Julius Randle. That's real.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And then I'd go San Antonio, Sacramento, Phoenix. And San Antonio, I just trust Wemby. I just would want Wemby more than any of those like other players on the planet right now. So, but it's crazy, bro. The West is so freaking deep. Like, there's just going to be good basketball teams that are just left complete. Like, there's a chance that KD and Book or, whoever it's going to be just might not make the playoffs, which is ridiculous to think about.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point that Tyler made about come to a playoff series. Are you banking on Steph and Draymond? I think the same logic applies for KD and
I'd have him over Phoenix, TBH, I think. I think I'd have Golden State there.
Man, it's hard because the problem with the Warriors is that they suck. That's the only problem, is that they're not good. But Draymond's out right now. But the defense still looks fine. It's just the offense around Steph.
Starting Quentin Post at the 5. Bro.
Let's go.
Modern stretch big. I do like the Schroeder fit, and I think that he can play better than he has overall as a Warrior. But I really, really dislike both them and the Suns, which is funny because I came into the year disliking both those teams. Then early in the year, I was like, well, here's a little something. And now it's like, no, that was fake. That was an apparition. So I do worry about banking on this Spurs roster if you come into the play-in game, and maybe I'll feel differently when that moment comes. But for now, I kind of want to be an optimist. And, there are guys who I like here, right? I like Champagny. I like Vassell, but it's not super compelling playoff stuff. And I think it only becomes a factor when you're looking at other rosters that are as flawed as the Warriors or the Suns. Even the Kings, I think that, that offense is really high-powered. And
I think, for the Spurs, I think there's a lot of projection involved. I think 2 years from now, you're going to have, Castle's a playoff player. Vassell's a playoff player. Sohan's a playoff player. But right now, in terms of going into the playoffs, and I think you will definitely be a positive player. The only 3 I'm confident in on the Spurs are Fox, Wemby, and Chris Paul.
I mean, my thing is we saw Fox as the number 1 in a playoff series, and I think the biggest question is probably just how efficient Wemby can be in his first run. Is his 3-ball going to be hidden? Can he carry that load? Can he be efficient? But I don't know, man. I think the Spurs could be here a lot quicker than we realize. I would say maybe next year.
Well, and the argument for the Spurs, the Spurs right now are an average offensive team and an average defensive team. They just added De'Aaron Fox while losing nothing right now. Mm-hmm. They're going to be better. They are going to be better. So I'm okay with sticking at number 10 with them because the Suns and the Warriors have been painfully average, mediocre teams, and they are not getting any better. There's no savior coming through the door for them. I want to look long-term for a second here, though, because with everything that's been shaken up in the West now, it's not just changing the immediate playoff picture, who do you guys think is best set up? Like, if you were to rank the top 5 teams who are best positioned 5 years from now in the West, when we look to the future, who do you think they are? How would you rank them?
OKC's obviously number
Yes.
one. Like, that's not even worthy of a discussion. I think I'd go probably Houston next. Just because they have so many young players, they have a lot of assets, and like their guys are starting to emerge, like specifically on men. I think my number 3 would probably be Memphis still. I think they're a flawed roster, but they still are so young, and they have like 15 NBA players. Like, you can do. There's so much flexibility there. If a superstar becomes available, you're gonna have arguably the best package besides OKC. So I'm gonna go OKC, Houston, Memphis. I think my 4 is gonna be maybe the Lakers, just because they have Luka Doncic now, and it's like, figure out the rest.
I feel like you're sleeping on somebody here, my friend.
Majorly.
You don't have the Spurs here? I would have the Spurs number 2.
Man.
I'd go the Spurs. Okay, I'd go the Spurs 4th. After, Spurs would be my 4 over LA. Yeah, I kind of like blanked on the whole Wemby variable. Yeah,
right.
I think Spurs are my 4, and then I think I'd go LA 5th.
So the reason that I would have the Spurs number 2 above Houston, above Memphis, and I would have Houston above Memphis because the remaining assets that Houston has, right? All the deals that they have in play, they just have so much at their disposal, but still they don't have the guy. I love Amen Thompson. They do not have like a surefire number 1 creator on a title team at all. That is still a major question mark for them. And they have the tools to go out there and get that guy probably, but they haven't done it. The Spurs have Victor Wembanyama. They have the guy who I expect to be the best player in the NBA for the next decade, who I think is going to end up on the NBA Mount Rushmore. Now they have De'Aaron Fox. They have the complementary guard. They have multiple young players who I like, but the big thing is what we laid out. They still have all the Hawks first-round picks. They have so many incoming draft picks. They have draft capital that surpasses Houston, that isn't at OKC level, but like is still this bounty, even though they just gave up several first rounders. That to me is the thing. They have by far the most important building block, which is Victor Wembanyama, who is going to draw players, who is going to always keep them in contending mode, and they have clear avenues to improve, and they have internal talent. I'm going to bet on that, as opposed to Houston being like, yeah, there's a lot of potential here, but there's more questions, like a fundamental question of who is that guy.
Yeah, you're kind of talking me into it. I guess where my head's at is like, I feel like it's a little bit risky to hinge so much of the future on just one guy, even if that guy is Victor Wembanyama. Like, I feel like I would have felt the same way about, like, hindsight is 2020, but like this is basically like if we had the same conversation in 2005 about LeBron and the Cavs, and then the Cavs just never put together a good enough roster.
Yeah, but they won 66 games and they made a finals and they won 60 games in back-to-back years. Like, realistically, not many teams were better in that window. They didn't win the title, but
again, hindsight is 2020. But look at Cavs in 2005, and then look at the Magic when they drafted Dwight Howard. Same year. And it's like everyone would have said the Cavs had a better future than the Magic. And then the Magic put together a team that was pretty much on par with the Cavs during those years, maybe even a little bit better.
But did the Cavs ever make a move as capable as what the Spurs just did in year 2 going out and getting De'Aaron Fox? They didn't.
They drafted Joe Alexander, bro. No, I think that was a Bucks guy. But
that was the Bucks, but I like that you tried to put that.
No, they drafted Luke Jackson, bro. Come on, that's
they
the
did draft
needle
Luke Jackson. You got your white busts confused.
To your point, yes, that does make already immediately like put them in a better spot. But like, I guess my question is, what's stopping them from? Basically, I can't even find the word.
Look, dude, he can't make the argument, bro. It's Wemby. No, it's Wemby.
It's like, what if the Spurs just botch every move from here on out? And then it's like
that's what the Cavs did, and they still won 66 games and made the finals. Like, the Spurs have already shown more competence to me, and they have way more assets to improve.
Well, and I think young Wemby, you guys tell me if I'm out of pocket. I mean, he's a better asset than young LeBron, right?
Young LeBron's kind of
Wemby,
crazy.
Guys. It's Wemby.
LeBron came out of high school. He was like 18.
I know. Well, Wemby is on the GOAT trajectory. Like,
I agree. Like, they're equivalent. They are the best asset in the league, and there's no question about it.
Can I also though make the argument that LeBron's specific play style, being by far the GOAT offensive floor raiser, allowed that team to look so much better. Like, that was not a 66 win team.
Hell no.
And I don't think Wemby can do. I think Wemby's in a crazy floor raiser. That's like a complete outlier of like LeBron James.
LeBron, what I would say, is definitely the greatest overall floor raiser in NBA history. Now, I would say Jokic makes a very strong case as the best offensive floor raiser, but obviously he's not having LeBron's defensive impact. So yes, 2009, 2010, nobody else in NBA history, not even Michael Jordan, is lifting those specific rosters to win 60 games.
You know who I want to compare the Wemby thing to, actually even better than LeBron? The Timberwolves looked like they were going to build around KG in the late 90s, and then they just tanked.
You're pointing to generational incompetence.
David Stern took all their draft picks, ain't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, they cost themselves.
What a dick!
Picks, but yeah, I think, Tyler, you are trying to find a way to be lower on the Spurs. Because realistically, when you get a talent like this, the Bucks land Kareem, they make one move, they win the title, right? Like, LeBron is the outlier to be that sort of overwhelming talent and not win a title.
I agree,
the team that drafted him.
Like,
it happened to Shaq, but Shaq got to the finals. They only had 4 years.
Kareem was the best player in the league from day one, though. That's the difference for me. Like, Wemby, I think, is on that trajectory, and I think he has, like, these flashes of a top 5 player. But the questions I still have for Wemby moving forward are, like, is he that offensive creator, or is he the Kevin Garnett, where it's, like, generational player, all-time defender, but isn't, like, the 30-point per game scorer that can lift the offense from the depths of hell? Well, that's where I'm, like, I think that's the thing I still need to see with Wemby. And if he is that, I'm there.
But I think that he will always be a more impactful regular season defender, at least, than KG, even though I think KG is a top 5 defender ever, just because of the sheer rim protection of it.
It's fair.
Like, I think he's going to be maybe the best defensive floor raiser. And then, no, I don't think that he's going to be like a true number 1 offensively, but I do think he'll give you an efficient, I mean, why would he not give you 27 and 12? Like, he's already damn near doing that in year 2. Yeah. And he hasn't been paired with that offensive guy yet. We'll see how Fox already helps his production and efficiency.
Then my question is, the current scoring he's doing right now, do you think that would hold up in the playoffs? Because KG's argument was never regular season scoring.
Yeah.
Like, KG was always, we get to the playoffs and all of a sudden I'm a below average efficiency scorer.
No, it's very true. It's very true. I think that Wemby has so many more physical advantages than KG. I mean, that's part of it. KG was reliant on a tough shot diet, right? He lived on a lot of those 2-point jumpers, those long twos, and those left him. And even compared to like a Duncan of his own era, we've talked about this before, right? But the physicality out of the post. Wemby is 7'4". He shoots 36% from 3. He is like the craziest lob threat when he does roll that we've seen, just because of size and length and athleticism. There's so much more automatic offense with him that's just embedded into every game than there ever was with a KG. So even if I think there are certain matchups that can really disrupt him, like we talked about with Houston, there are defenses out there. OKC, I still think the floor is higher, as is the ceiling.
So we're all in agreement. The Thunder won.
Yes.
Tyler, you had who at 2?
Houston, Memphis, then San Antonio.
Okay, I'm glad Houston came up, because I think Houston has to be up really high.
Houston's
so
3.
Tough for me. It's so tough for me because I see where you guys are coming from, and I think Wemby is just this like one of one talent that really can just like single-handedly give them a better future than everyone else. But it's just tough for me because I look at Memphis and it's like I guess when I'm thinking future, I'm thinking like now and in the future. And it's like Memphis has all of those young assets and they're already a like really competitive team.
I would just rather have Wemby, if I'm being honest with you. And so is Denver not in these conversations? Do you guys either?
I'd have Denver 4. I'd have Denver above Memphis.
I'd have Denver above Memphis as well. I think I would go Oklahoma City. I think I'd go San Antonio. I might go Denver and then Houston, just because of where Denver's already at and because they have a guy like Jokic. But I think and LA is somewhere in this. Maybe,
I see. Yeah. I don't know. My thing, I guess I'm just higher on Memphis, and I think it's just because I view them as like, you have 15 rotation players on most teams, and half of them are like 21 years old, and you still have a bunch of picks. Like, you have guys like G.G. Jackson and Vince Williams who are struggling to make a rotation and would like start on some teams. And so my case is, they already have like a baseline of a team that is like almost there. And the moment a star becomes available, they can throw the best package of players.
That's a good argument. That's a fair argument.
My take is like, say right now, Kevin Durant becomes available. I think Memphis can go get Kevin Durant and immediately is a inner circle contender.
But in terms of future assets, the Spurs have more. Like, what are you going to value? Are you going to value the depth of rotation players, or are you going to value, holy shit, I can get the Hawks first-round picks for the next 3 years? I want that if I'm rebuilding.
But you have to hit on the draft pick. Like, G.G. Jackson was already a hit of a pick. He's like he's 20 years old and is a 17-point-per-game scorer.
Yeah, but G.G. Jackson was a hit of a pick at 45th overall. If I get a chance at the 11th pick that I'm getting from the Hawks for 3 years, I would take that.
I think if you go back 5 drafts, the 11th pick on average will be a worse player than G.G. Jackson already.
Well, I could get Shea.
Okay.
I got Shea 11th overall.
Yeah, I see.
I think it's pretty similar, actually. I don't totally disagree. I mean, G.G. Jackson was a big hit with where he was picked, but if you're drafting 11, you got a good chance to get a good player.
Yeah. You also have a chance of being a bad player.
That's true. That's true. It's not a sure thing.
Rotation.
Hey, Papa Giannis went 13th, fellas.
This is true.
I guess. I don't know. I look at. I just feel like maybe you're right that they can't make the biggest splash for a specific guy. But then, I think Memphis has a lot more players that are NBA proven than San Antonio does.
No doubt about that.
And I think the problem with San Antonio is I think a lot of the guys they do have that are young guys are just so much. They look so much more valuable because they are playing with Wembanyama. And it's like, if you get some of these other guys on other teams, like, would we really, I guess, I don't want to hate on anyone, but would we even be talking about Devin Vassell if he was in Washington right now?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't view him as that type of player.
I mean, he'd probably be way less efficient, but he's still a good player. My thing is, my fundamental difference here with you, Tyler, is I think Memphis is way lower for me. And the only reason I say that is I think I prefer the individual players. Like with the Rockets, even with the Rockets' great depth, and obviously that factors in, Amen Thompson, I think, is my favorite player from both teams. The Spurs may be way farther away, but they've got the future assets, and they've got Wemby. The Lakers, I think I would have over Memphis because they've got Luka in cap space, right? And I think even, you guys can call me crazy or not because of the corner they've painted themselves in, I think I prefer Minnesota to even Memphis' future just because they have a guy like Anthony Edwards.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Here's my last argument for Memphis, because I don't want to just sit here and act like I'm a Grizzlies fan or nothing. I think the last argument I would make is that of all of these teams, we're talking about, okay, they have the assets to make these moves. Like, they can do this, this, and this, and then all of a sudden they're in a spot. Am I crazy for thinking that even if Memphis did literally nothing but internally develop, they're a contender for 4 or 5 years? Bane is 26, Jaren's 25, Ja's 25, Jalen Wells is 21, Aldama's 24, Kennard is 28, Pippen's 24, Laravia's 23, Edie's 22. Their entire rotation, they're like a 54-win team, and their entire rotation is below 26 years old.
Even with projection to me of seeing these guys get better, there's nothing that, it's the 1A quotient. It's literally just the 1A quotient to me is where I would rather have that. And this is no shade at Ja or Triple J. And I understand your argument, but even with the collective getting better, there would, Ja would have to take such a massive offensive leap as a jump shooter or something and become that 1A to really move me. Because I don't think there's anything that would change them to be the favorite to me.
Okay,
I agree.
Let me ask you guys both one last question then. If Memphis right now, say Phoenix is hey, Devin Booker is available, and Memphis goes out and gets Devin Booker, just say that happens, and then now Devin Booker's their go-to half-court weapon. They still have Ja, Bane, Jaren Jackson. Would that change your, would you now feel okay, Memphis is in a position where for the next 4 or 5 years, they're an inner circle contender, and that future just matters more than the potential moves we could make to surround Wemby?
Okay, but to be fair, Houston and San Antonio can put forth better packages to get a Devin Booker if they want to than Memphis can without giving up Bane, Triple J, or Ja. So that's the thing. If any of these teams make the move, well, then they're vaulted up higher in terms of these conversations. I just think I side with Logan. The history of the NBA is told by superstars, man. It is told by top 5 players. It is
Yep.
told by generational talents. The Spurs not just have that, they have like one of the few in NBA history. I'm betting on that. If I'm thinking what projects to a title, it's that. And that's why I still have the Nuggets where I do, because I know that as long as Jokic is in his prime, the Nuggets are going to be in the mix. They're going to be winning playoff series. And I do still think they have a good group around him, right? They need Jamal Murray to consistently be anything close to what he was in 2023 in the playoffs, or just at least better than what he has been in totality this year. But like, when you have a GOAT offensive player, when you have a potential GOAT defensive player who can also be a offensive clear star like Wemby, that opens up so much because your floor is so high, and then people want to play with that guy. You want to be aggressive in making those moves. Memphis might just sit on their hands and they might say, hey, we're content with being really good. And they can be really good for 5 years. And a title will never come of it unless they make a real big move. So that's why I would have them down at 5. I think that there's a real leap that needs to be taken for them to actually get into like the sort of title threat tier that I think is easier to achieve when you have a Wembanyama talent and you have the assets that the Spurs do have. And now you have Fox, and you've shown the willingness to go out there and be aggressive and make those moves. The Lakers are an interesting team in this conversation because they also have one of those talents. Now, I don't think that Luka long-term is the asset Wemby is, but he's the closest thing that we have just about, right? Him and Shea are the guys in that next generation. Logan, you'd have Ant in there. I think long-term Ant is, in a similar vein. But obviously they don't have nearly comparable assets to what San Antonio has because they've really depleted their draft capital. And unless they do trade LeBron, which I don't think is going to happen, they don't really have a way to replenish that. So that's why I would have the Lakers just outside. I think their future is a lot brighter than it was going to be before Luka trade. Way, way brighter. But it was going to be in a dark place. And now they're really just banking on
they
Luka keeping them competitive, which he will.
That's what's crazy is, everybody. And everybody would have had Dallas in this top 4 stamp.
Oh, yeah.
And they have now moved to maybe the bottom, like near Phoenix.
Yeah.
Dude, you got me sitting here thinking, damn, would I rather have Dallas's future or Portland's? And it's like,
Hey, Portland's got a sneaky good future, I think.
Portland. Bro, and Phoenix can trade Book, right? Phoenix,
Yeah.
they've fucked things up badly. They have a way to get some of it back. Dallas doesn't. Nobody's giving you 4 firsts for Kyrie or Anthony Davis. And you aren't going to see one of your own first-round picks for 4 years from 2027 to 2030.
Carson,
Dallas is at the bottom. They
our-
might be last in terms of future, 5 years from now, 5+ years from now.
I know we've talked about like the historical stature of this trade and all.
Yeah.
Can you think of anything that has been as like catastrophic? Is it the Kareem trade that is just like catastrophically as bad as this? Like,
the Kareem trade was really, really bad. The Bucks were still able to rebuild decently quickly into being a good basketball team.
has there ever been a deal that has flipped a team's future on its head like this?
Joe Smith.
There's been some bad ones, but I'm even thinking about the Warriors after the Wilt trade rebuilt super fast. They got Rick Barry, they got Nate Thurmond, and they were a good team. They were in the NBA Finals by 1967. They traded Wilt in the 64-65 season.
I almost wonder if the argument would have to stem from letting a player walk, Orlando losing Shaq, for example. That's
right.
The only thing I can think of. That's comparable.
I think you're right, Tyler, because I do not think there was a comparison of a franchise willingly giving up a player like this, and again, doing it without the pressure. But yeah, Orlando, that's a great one. Obviously, if LeBron hadn't come back to save the Cavs, they were fucked after he left initially. Yeah, there's been some bad ones, but...
And what's so funny about the LeBron thing is, even with hindsight, knowing he's gonna leave and then come back, the equivalent of the Luka trade is you traded LeBron after 07 or 08. It's
yeah,
literally,
it's
bro.
So stupid. You wouldn't do it.
You just would never do it. You would never do it when there's zero indication that he wants to leave or even has any idea what's going on. So, no, man, I think this trade is really unprecedented in a lot of ways. We've seen some trades that could age very poorly in recent years. Obviously, the first one that comes to mind in very recent years is giving up Shea and the pick that became J-Dub and multiple other firsts to get Paul George, but the process was a hell of a lot better.
Yeah,
with that
what's your take on that? Because every time I see that trade, I think it's a trade for PG and Kawhi. It's not just PG.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's
a good
exactly
point.
Yeah, my friends and I were having this talk right when it happened, and I was telling him, I was like, and Carson and I have had this conversation I think a million times on this show. Like, we can always say with hindsight, oh, well, I wouldn't have done that deal. Look, bro, if it's a package deal to get Kawhi and PG for 4 to 5 years together potentially, you're going to do that trade. Like, you just have to put your basketball moves and changes so quickly.
Yes.
But if you put your brain back then where we were all at, I think it's a really hard sell to say, would I rather stay with my current team, a 40-win team with SGA, and maybe we're up and coming, or would I rather pair Kawhi and PG? Because
everybody does it.
Like you said, you're not getting one or the other. They're a package deal.
Yeah.
And
also,
nowadays, I feel like a lot of people nowadays don't remember what Kawhi's stature was when that happened.
Man.
He was getting talked about like with Michael Jordan and LeBron.
Yeah, he was coming off of one of the great individual playoff runs that we've seen. And also, another thing that makes that deal look worse with retrospect is OKC's tremendous competence, right?
Yeah.
Like the fact that they do turn one of those picks into J-Dub, and does Shea develop into the player that he is elsewhere? Maybe, but OKC is definitely a great place for him to have done it. And now OKC is the Titan that they are, but there are other teams that wouldn't have been able to capitalize on that haul in the same way. So I definitely do not think that in terms of process, it's remotely comparable. Like I said, I think that if I were the Clippers GM, I would have done that deal at the time. It's aged poorly, but that's what's so crazy about this deal is I expect it to age horribly, and I can't understand the motives behind the decision.
I was more shocked. I was more shocked at this trade than when Kevin Durant signed with the Warriors.
Easily.
Same.
Like, that's how crazy it was.
Same.
Easily. I mean, to be fair, we were living in a different age where there wasn't so much disinformation, but never did I think, oh, it's fake that KD is headed to the Warriors. I just thought, holy shit. This, I thought, yeah. No way, man. There's no way. It is the craziest trade in NBA history. It really, truly is.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
All right, well, I think we can all agree that because of that, this is the craziest deadline ever. I mean, we've had some crazy ones. This alone probably would trump anything else, and then to pair it with the fact that the Fox trade has already gone down. Real quick, Tyler, before we let you go, because you've been so kind to give us a couple hours of your time, what's next, or what do you hope to see go down before the deadline?
Yeah, I want to see a competitive team get Cam Johnson. That's the one I'm really looking for. And it could be any one of these competitive teams. It could be Dallas. It could be Sacramento. It could be anyone in the East. Like, I want to see a competitive team get Cam Johnson because he's a really, really good player. I think, like you kind of talked about Lakers getting a big. That's something I'm looking out for.
Yeah.
I think Utah has a lot of players they could trade. Like, I feel like you could trade Sexton, Markkanen, Walker Kessler. So,
I don't think they can trade Markkanen this year because he extended in the offseason.
Okay. Yeah, I'm so unfamiliar with how all that stuff, all the restrictions and stuff work.
Is he eligible?
But yeah, I think, and honestly, I'm just gonna wait till Thursday because if you asked me this 3 days ago, I wouldn't have said, yeah. I mean, I'm just ready for Luka Doncic to go to the Lakers.
Yeah.
And then LaVine to the Kings was completely out of left field. Like even the betting odds had no idea that was about to happen. So yeah, I think I'm just gonna wait. Cam Johnson's the one I'm looking for, but in terms of what's actually gonna happen, I'm just gonna let it ride because I don't know what's Jimmy Butler. I guess I don't know what's happening with him. I'm kind of sick of it. I just want something to happen.
Yeah, that's the thing, Jimmy. Like, I can't really get excited about because I don't really see that landing spot where I'm like, oh yeah, this works beautifully. But also, it's like he stays in Miami and he's not gonna play for them. So like, I do want to see Jimmy go somewhere. It's just there's not really that landing spot that excites me, and I feel like it would be the Warriors, but the Warriors are apparently out on it. So for me, it's easily Cam Johnson, and specifically, I do want to see him go to the Thunder because I immediately solidifies the Thunder as the title favorite, just because there's one question remaining about this: the offensive skill alongside SGA, and it's the spot up shooting and the creation. But like, if you add a 6'8", 28-year-old on your timeline, $20 million a year contract, very reasonable, who shoots 42% from three on high volume and is a solid defender who can fit in, like, that's just a home run. And you can't keep hoarding these picks, man. Look at the Spurs. Admire what they did getting De'Aaron Fox. Now do the same because you have more draft picks than you could ever possibly use. And I think if you sit out on this, you will regret it, because it could be the difference between you winning the title this year and not winning the title. It could easily be the difference. And like, I've seen some Thunder fans talk about like, oh, well, Presti wants to prioritize being able to pay everybody. Like, what? That doesn't affect this. Cam Johnson's on a $20 million a year deal. You move off the Wiggins contract, you move off the Kenrich Williams contract, you move off the Jang. Like, those are contracts that are still on the books for multiple years. This wouldn't inhibit anything for them. It's only good stuff.
Do you know how gutting it would feel if OKC gets to the finals and they lose a tight series to Boston because of shooting?
Exactly.
And then they didn't pull the trigger on Cam Johnson? Like,
I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. It's the sort of move that when you have these assets and you're this good, you make. You just have to make it. And if Presti doesn't do it, I would say it's honestly inexcusable. If they win the title this year anyways, okay, but it would be bad.
And it could be that Brooklyn doesn't want to trade Cam Johnson. That's very much a possibility. But in terms of, like, I feel like OKC, like, dude, every move they've made since the Shea thing has been just like a home run. Like, getting Caruso and Hartenstein, like, I feel like they can't mess this up. Like, I feel like if they don't get Cam Johnson, it's not on them.
I tend to agree, because I do think that they nailed the Caruso trade. They nailed the Hartenstein trade. But the one thing that they haven't parted with in those moves is draft picks. I mean, they signed Hartenstein. They got Caruso without giving up draft capital, remarkably. But, like, dude, they have 4 first-rounders this year. They have 2 first-rounders incoming next year. They have 2 first-rounders in 2028. Like, you could give up 3 firsts for Cam Johnson, which I think Brooklyn would say, all right, we'll just take it. We'll take it in the filler contract. And we get Aaron Wiggins, who's like a good young player on an insane controlled contract. OKC could do that. It would still be a win because they just don't need this exorbitant amount of draft picks. What do you want to see, Logan? Is there anything else that we haven't mentioned? It's okay if there isn't. I feel like we kind of covered it.
The Luka trade just broke me mentally to the point where, like, I don't know
what's possible.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. My friends were saying
anything is possible.
My friends were saying they have theorized that this is the proof that we're in a simulation. That this is basically put the nail in the coffin. I want to see Jimmy get moved. My gut tells me that his contract and his attitude, and I think he has depreciated so far as an asset from this offseason that he's like almost immovable. Like, I almost feel like maybe Miami might have to attach assets to get off of him, and at that point, just let him walk in free agency.
They've handled this so poorly.
Yeah, and so, like, Pat tried to big dog Jimmy, and it's like, dude, Jimmy's just not that guy. I'm sorry, Pat. You're not going to win a petty off with Jimmy Butler. He is just the GOAT at that. So I love the Cam Johnson deal. I think he's one of those assets. And I just want to see teams be more aggressive in general. I guess I'll point the finger at Golden State. That's the one team that I'm still just like, I want to see you guys do anything, any move that makes you more competitive, because like I mentioned earlier, I think they're the one team that I think is the really big loser of this trade deadline. The Spurs got better. The Kings, I think, have gotten better for the long term and haven't gotten that much worse right now. The Mavericks have not fallen off a cliff. Like, they got worse, but I don't think they've gotten, the Lakers, I think, have gotten, like you just got leapfrogged by a lot of basketball teams right now. And, again, you should be scrambling because it's not even a guarantee. So I want to see Phoenix be aggressive as they can. We saw the 3-team deal go down, maybe shop Beal and see. Jimmy would be, for Phoenix or Golden State, I think the most intriguing asset. But I just want to see Golden State and Phoenix be aggressive in the West because their timelines.
Really? I don't want to see Jimmy to Phoenix. I just despise Phoenix.
You don't think that would work, or what?
Such a gross team.
It's just it just doesn't move the needle. That's the problem.
And you're going to be more.
But I mean, what's the
stars in their mid-30s?
You guys think they should just give up on it and deal Book and KD?
Give up. I think they should. Yes.
Okay.
I really, really do. I think there's no salvaging this current team with the assets they have.
Yeah, they don't. If they get Jimmy, they still don't have a competent big. Like, shout out Nick Richards, but if he's starting in a playoff series against Jokic, good luck. Yeah. Good luck. Yeah. And I actually think the biggest loser, I'm waiting till Thursday because we still don't know what's going to happen. So far, the biggest loser to me is Miami, because it's like, you got to do something. You have to, because I actually, like, this might be a hot take, but like, if you find a way to work Jimmy into like some kind of future value, I kind of love where Miami's at with their situation with Khalil Ware looking as good as he has, and then Heroes Leap. Like Jovic is already a really, really good defender. Bam is still young. Like I feel like if the Heat find a way to get some sort of salvaged future value for Jimmy, I love where they're at.
Real quick, do you guys think that Jimmy, no matter what, so hypothetically, let's say Jimmy stays with Miami, is it a guarantee that he accepts his player option? Even if Miami doesn't trade him?
I think he'll decline it no matter what.
Really?
He wants years.
I mean, who is paying? But my thing is, who is paying him $50 million?
I think Jimmy has a very high chance of getting like 15 mil for 4 years or like 20 mil for 3 years, and that's already an upgrade over 50.
But barely. But at that point, he could take.
I feel like
take the minimum for the next 3 years, and that total bottom line would be the same.
I think there's a team out there that's gonna pay him, and it might be stupid.
I think it has to be more than that, and I think it will be more than that. By the way,
it'll probably be, if I had to guess, it would be like 3 years, 28 mil.
I wouldn't want to pay. I wouldn't want to pay Jimmy anything like long term.
I mean, dude, think about it. Like DeMar has still been able to get his $25 million a year.
Yeah,
Jimmy's gonna get more than that,
and
Jimmy
it'll be
in
like
the 30s.
Clay, what was Clay's deal?
Like it'd be like Philly, man. Clay's getting 20 mil a year, I think.
Yeah, and that was a discount.
Like,
well,
Philly,
is Clay? I think he's getting a little bit less than that, isn't he?
Philly or Milwaukee, like
Clay's getting like
that's
16.
in panic. One team that's in panic mode would pull the trigger. Like I think Milwaukee's the best example. If they found a way to clear cap, they would pull the trigger on Jimmy to pair with Dame and Giannis.
Which honestly, I'd be good with. If I were them.
It would
You're
be
already
fine.
old.
Yeah.
You're already old. You might as well lean into it. Logan, you asked earlier about some of the worst trades that just like destroyed franchises, and I've done a little bit more thinking, and I've concluded that there's still no comparison to what the Mavs have done with Luka, because like there are those destructive trades, right? All of them involve hindsight bias. You can look at what the Nets did trading for KG and Pearson. Like that was bad process. They didn't give up an asset remotely comparable to Luka Doncic. You can say, oh, well, the Hornets traded away Kobe Bryant. They traded away the 13th pick in the draft, right? Oh, the Hawks traded Bill Russell. They traded away a draft pick. Like, there's nothing like this.
I think the closest thing, and still not even close at all, is James Harden OKC. I think that's the closest because I think it was pretty clear. We were in a different time and age, but like, and like hindsight changes things. But like, if you look at 2012 Harden, it was so obvious what he was going to be to me. Like, if you just watch his tape or even like dive into the numbers, it was so obvious that he was going to become what he was in Houston. And like, I guess the difference would be, it'd be more like if the Rockets traded Harden in 2015. That's kind of, it was like Luka already took that leap and got to that level. And so like, I guess the closest thing is like Harden, but a few years down the line. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, Harden, super talented young player. He hadn't shown you 5 years of first-team All-NBA level production at 25 years old. Unbelievable. Truly unbelievable.
Actually, nobody has an NBA history.
Yeah, you can believe it or not. Yeah, if you can believe it or not. It's like if the Bucks with Kareem just said, all right, well, we're good. Thanks. 1974, we lost in the finals. And then we've had enough.
And then they trade for old Walt Frazier or something, and think that makes them the title favorites.
Unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. Well, Tyler, thank you for coming on, man. This was a joy. Appreciate your time. Everybody, as always, go check out Hoop Venue on YouTube. Awesome basketball content, and go check out the Hoop Venue podcast, which, as Tyler mentioned, he does with Sean Davis. Also, really good stuff. If you want more of our stuff, you can find it all over our YouTube channel. We've got all of our full shows on the NBA and the NFL. And we also have all of our video content, video essays, film breakdown on our YouTube channel. And you can listen to the show across all audio platforms. You can also follow us across social, TikTok, Instagram, at NerdSesh, Twitter, at nerd_sesh to see some of our instant reactions when big news like this drops, quick hitting stuff, trivia clips of ours, clips from the show, graphics from the show. That's all across. Join our Discord if you want. That is also linked at the link tree across our social media bios. So one last big shout out to Tyler. Any last words before we let you go, my friend?
No, sir. Appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, man. It's always a joy. And with that, I've been Carson Brabber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was NerdSesh.